God, you're inside my head. David Morse is it. Oh, are you looking at the IMDb right now?
I'm looking at the IMDb.
Oh.
Welcome to SinCast, presented by Cinemasins.
All right, everybody, welcome to the SinCast. This is Chris Atkinson from Cinemasins, joined as always by the voice of Cinemasins, Jeremy Scott.
Hello.
And from Music Video Sins, Barrett Scher.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Dr. Nick.
Yeah. Did you go to upstairs Tampa Medical College too?
I love Dr. Nick so much. He gets in, like a patient comes in, and he's like, holy smokes, you need booze.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then the one where Homer's trying to get fatter and he like keeps on, here's some suggestions, you know, like if you don't want to put this on that, try bacon, you know.
That's the same one where Homer works. He's trying to get fat to work from home,
yeah,
right?
To get
and
disability.
The bird that drinks the water. It's drinking the
water.
water.
Yeah. And he finally gets the bird to push the buttons because it basically just say why every time.
Yeah.
And then of course, you know, it like gets knocked over or whatever, and it causes all the problems.
The Simpsons.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to get into our rants right off the bat.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
I'm as mad as hell!
You've never seen me very upset.
Lord Jesus! Lord Jesus!
We're going to have the same format as we've had the past 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And everything, but I think we're gonna probably change some things up after this one.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be all the same stuff, but we're gonna probably keep the rant in there for sure, and a lot of the like news stuff and everything, recommends all that. But we're gonna change some things up so that, because I know that some of you out there, maybe not a lot of you, but some of you out there want to get back to some other stuff that we've done in the past. So,
we've got plenty to talk about.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Who wants to start us off with a rant?
Well, I want to talk about the stalker POV.
Okay.
This is in a movie when the movie lets the audience know someone is watching a character by the camera work.
Yeah.
Usually outside the house. It's usually handheld to kind of simulate a human head. It's kind of like moving to the left or the right. And that's all well and good, except that these days people are doing it when there is no one out there.
Mm-hmm.
They're just trying to set up a jump scare. Like, you get that POV of a person looking, and she's in the kitchen, and she goes over to the living room, and the POV goes over to the living room window, and then it's a cat.
Yeah.
And it's just a huge cheat to use a camera trick that the industry has taught us as watchers for years to know what that means, right? You know it when you see it in television or in a movie, when it cuts to that stalker POV or whatever. Oh, there's somebody outside watching. Oh, my God. But these days, now they're just fucking with us. Yeah. Now they're just like, I'm going to throw that in, but there's not actually anybody out there. Or maybe there is. I'm never coming back to it.
Yeah.
I'm never going to show you who that is. It's just, it's like a cheap way to add creep under a scene where there is no creep.
It's funny. Yeah. This actually came up in Friday the 13th Part 2.
Yeah.
And we did the Sins video this past October on it. It's not only that type of POV, but it's so out in the open that there's no way the character can't possibly see the killer.
That one, it's a small ass house in Friday the 13th Part 2. And she's looking directly at the camera.
She's looking for her dog, and then it's like it's like right in front of her. And it's like, I don't know what you're trying to accomplish here. If it was really scary, then I could see, maybe you could see some branches in the way or something. Even then, though, he's still right there. So
no, I don't get it. And there's no reason to rely on jump scares anymore. Like a movie like It, which was a fantastic movie, just bothers the shit out of me because it relied so much on jump scares when it doesn't need to. Like Pennywise is terrifying on its own. Right. That bothers me. Like, you can set up a creep factor without that.
It's basically not trusting the audience at this point, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because the horror movies that are really effective, I feel like, are the ones that, sounds are, sort of in the distance somewhere, and like, it sets a mood, it sets a lot of these things, and sometimes there might not be an actual scare there, like something on the screen that's going to kill them, but sometimes just your own imagination is enough.
Yeah.
And that's just sort of not trusting.
Well, you know at this point, when the music stops and the camera's static, you know it's going to pan over right or left, and something's going to happen. This happens in trailers at this point.
Yeah, and it's just what sucks is I cannot remember the movie I was watching 3 days ago that did this. That pissed me off.
It was probably a wrong turn sequel.
It probably was one of the wrong turn sequels. I like to watch shitty movies sometimes. We'll get into that a little bit later. I think we have a cue about that I'll A. But anyway, that is my rant. I'm sick of, and it extends beyond just the stalker POV, but any kind of camera trick that the audience already knows it means X, Y, or Z, but then you're just doing it to fuck with us and you pull it right back. I hate that.
What you may have been watching, because I think I saw this on a Breaking Bad episode.
Oh, yeah?
Because even great shows like that, like if they're, it's not Mike Ehrmantraut outside or, one of the other characters. Like they'll have a POV outside of a house and peer in, and sometimes they won't even cut back to it.
Yeah.
They won't do it like a jump scare. They'll just do it to establish the scene, but it's in that POV format instead of just an external shot.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a short, sweet rant. I'm done. Next.
I've got a couple of rants.
Ooh.
Bring it.
The first one is somewhat, it's not the same thing that Jeremy's talking about, but it's somewhat tied to it because there's a common thing that's happening in movies, and I don't know what it is, and I think I've even railed against this before on this podcast, but I've just seen 3 movies in a row that do this.
Oh, Jesus, I know what it is.
And it is the "You're Late."
It's because, why do they do this?
Yeah, there has never been a consequence to "You're Late."
No.
Never once. If you've watched any movie at all and they say "You're late," there has never been one goddamn consequence to it. And they do it in every movie. I saw it in Kingsman.
Yep.
Julianne Moore's in the theater watching Elton John, and her minion comes in and she's like, "You're late." Well, okay. Guess nothing's gonna happen to me.
No, it never. You're walking into a meeting or you're walking into some sort of innocuous place where your lateness has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, and there are times where it doesn't even fucking matter that they're late.
Yeah.
Obviously none of them really matter, but I'm just saying, in the situation in Ender's Game, there's a part where he gets on the ship and some kid goes, "You're late," and I'm like, first off, who the fuck are you? and then the second part of that is, it's not like he had any choice in the matter. Right. They recruit him and they get him on it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I can't remember the third movie that I saw in this string.
Was it Valerian?
It was Valerian.
Yeah.
It was Valerian that had this too. I was like, come on.
By the way, I have not once typed that movie's title correctly in any of our doings. I saved the script as Valerian and the world of a whatever bullshit. The folder I put it in was titled some other thing. I'm never going to call it by its real name.
It's interesting because I get Valerian and Ender confused a lot.
No, yeah.
It's basically the same thing.
Ender's Game is an interesting movie to me. I really liked it.
Yeah, I do too.
But I have never read the book.
Yeah, I have.
And I think if I had read the book before I saw the movie and knew what was coming at the end, I wouldn't have enjoyed the movie as much.
And I just wrote something that says this is a reveal that I think if you've read the book, it fucks up this movie.
Yeah, it absolutely does, because it renders everything you've seen prior moot.
Yeah, it's just one of those type of things where it felt like you feel almost cheated when you see it in the movie, because you already know by reading the book and everything. And it also feels like a cheat, and this isn't the movie's fault. But it also feels like a cheat because it's such a great reveal in a movie that didn't really set the box office on fire.
No.
So this is a sort of a reveal that everybody should sort of be talking about, because it's so great. And I remember when I read this book, and it was 22 years ago. I read this book. I was like, oh my God, it's such a satisfying, amazing, it makes you think. It's all these different things. And yeah, Ender's Game's one of those movies that it hurts a little bit that it just didn't take off more than it did.
It wasn't even a hit, really, was it?
I don't think so.
I think it made 70 to 80 million, somewhere in there, so it's mid-level.
So half what they spent on Harrison Ford.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure he'll be reprising his role.
I already wrote an outtake for that from 42. I want the player.
Oh
who's
my
got the
God!
guts not to stand up.
I am under the. I think I wrote that same outtake. The thing is that's funny to me is both those movies came out in the same year, and his character is essentially the same.
Oh yeah.
He's trying to find the guy who won't fight back. You know.
That's a great Harrison Ford.
Yeah, and you know, there's others like We've Got Company. I'm tired of that too, and I'm tired of people saying bingo, which was also in Valerian.
We also have we've sinned a million times. So you got to come take a look at this.
Yeah, which was I think the original first time we started sending that was in 2012, where they say it like 5 times or something.
They do.
Like
They
that.
say it a bunch in
like
that movie.
every single time. It's like somebody comes down a ladder, you got to come see this, or you know, somebody runs into a room, you got to come see this.
You're not gonna believe this.
Yeah,
when you can actually just tell the person what's going on.
I mean, and I've had people tell me, you know, people talk like that, and I'm like, okay, yes, when it's something trivial, like if my cat is laying in a cute position,
right,
I might text my wife and say, "Come in here and look at the cat."
Yeah,
or you got to come look at this.
Right,
but if like it's life or death. There's a mission on the line. No one is going, especially in the fucking military.
Right.
No one is going, General, you better come take a look at this. They would say 2 bogeys inbound or missile in flight. They would not waste that time. It's just a crutch. I don't even think the screenwriters realize they're doing this stuff.
I don't think so either. I think the "you're late" thing, I think that's just ingrained. It's like it's already in the writing software.
It's like yeah. It's like,
they start off everything with "you're late." They have to delete it.
You're late.
Yeah, exactly.
It's part of the screenwriting software.
They have to delete it every single time. Because every time I try to write dialogue, it says "you're late." Well, yeah. I mean,
it's tried and true.
Yeah, exactly. You got to work it in somehow.
I don't even know what it's meant to accomplish.
I don't either.
I think it's meant. I have a few theories. I've actually spent time thinking about this. I think it's meant. First of all, it's just something that's like done like breathing to introduce a scene or a character, but I think it's also used to try and show a hierarchy.
Yeah.
So, like, the person who walks up and the other person that says you're late has some authority over the person who was late.
I think that's the main one.
Yeah.
And that can be a subconscious way to let me know, but you don't need to do it in shit where I've already learned everybody's rank.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, you don't have... It's just... It's the most baffling of all of these.
I think that the conversation that they have will reveal the hierarchy anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really... I understand that too. As soon as you started saying that, I was like, yeah, it seems like it's a hierarchy thing. It seems like that's what they're trying to accomplish. But yeah, I mean...
you already know half the time. In Valerian in particular, you know that this guy is the highest up, the Herbie Hancock character.
Yeah, that's such a weird casting, yeah.
And then with Kingsman, you know that Julianne Moore rules the roost there.
You know,
she's in the middle of a fucking Elton John concert.
Yeah, you know that from moment one when she starts narrating, basically, and she's talking to those 2 dudes. Like it's over. She's the boss.
Yeah.
I have another rant. I saw Phantom Thread twice last weekend.
Must be good.
It is very good.
It's awesome.
I'm having a hard time figuring out if this is your type of movie, though.
You know, nothing about it feels like it is.
I don't think you would like this movie.
You're probably right.
For me, I love it because it's just one of those type of movies that's so unusual and makes you think about a lot of these things. I don't think these are like... This is not a relationship that you're going to be familiar with. And I think for a lot of people, this whole thing, like, would this happen? Would you have people who act this way? So on and so forth, might be a real sticking point. And for me, I think I read more into it as far as a symbolic relationship and everything is more than I think of it as this is something real that people do. I think there's like some sort of I think people do this, not the way they do it,
right?
But they still do this type of stuff.
Man, his method. Did you read about what he did for this movie?
No.
Like, there's some kind of dress, I think it starts with a G, that the dresses he makes in this movie are sort of in the style of, and they're like from the 15th century or something, I don't know, some ancient design or whatever. He spent a year as an apprentice at a dressmaker's.
Oh, really?
Yes, a year, and finished by making one of those dresses by hand, by himself.
Well, he looks like a dressmaker in this movie.
Well, and then Paul Thomas Anderson even said none of that's going to help him. Like, none of that is in the movie. It just helps him get into character.
Yeah.
We're not having him make a dress for real in the movie.
Right.
He doesn't need to do this for what's on screen. He needs to do it for characterization purposes. God,
well, and that's
fascinating.
That's the thing. Like his character is shown as very meticulous and like, you know, all these different little detail oriented type of things and whatever. And yeah, he probably could have done that in his sleep, but
Anyway, you had something else to say about this movie.
So I've seen it twice. I saw it when I was in LA. I saw it in a 70 millimeter regular film presentation.
Mm.
There's actually 2 rants within this one rant in my second rant. But the first thing is that I'm going to rant about is if you are a movie theater that pretends to care about the audience coming in, because this is one of those things, you sit down, there's a guy who comes up and announces things and all that, and tells you, hey, enjoy this movie and all that. And I'm like sitting there going, oh, okay, well, this presentation is going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as soon as the movie starts, there's scratches on the film, and I cannot look away.
Yeah,
I can't look away from it. And that, because there's no trailers, I understand exactly what happened in that situation. The leader in which they built this print on or whatever wasn't long enough so that when a projectionist is sitting there yanking the leader through, it's scratching the film as it gets to the brain part of the movie. And I know that, and that's probably what happened. The leader's just not long enough. That's what happened. But it continued. It went away, and I was like, okay, that's it. That's going to be all that we're going to see. It returned several times, meaning that they have some issues with the platter timing and stuff like that. So once splice goes through or something like that, that film is wrapping around and scratching, and then it comes back unraveled and everything's good again. Mm-hmm. So it happened all the way through the movie. Mm-hmm. And like, this is a movie where you sort of have to have your attention.
Yeah.
You can't just, look away. But I'm sitting there like, oh, these fucking scratches, man. I feel like if you're going to be that type of theater, you have to be somewhat on top of it.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, maybe you can never be, because maybe it's the bottom line is the bottom line. You can't have anybody like make sure this movie goes through fine every single time. I don't know.
But this is an art house theater, right?
This is an art house theater, and this is something that's telling you this is something great. You're going to watch this movie and not be distracted by anything during the entire time. And I was really disappointed by that. The other thing I'm disappointed in is the 70 millimeter thing. I saw Paul Thomas Anderson's Master in 70 millimeter.
Yeah, me too.
As well. And I saw this Phantom Thread in 70 millimeter, and then I saw it at the Belcourt as a regular digital projection or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't know the difference, guys.
Except for the scratches?
Yeah, except for the scratches. I can't tell the difference. The aspect ratio seems the exact same. There wasn't anything that I felt like I was missing in this version that I saw in the other version. Mm-hmm. When I saw the Master and I heard 70 millimeter, I was expecting a big, wide screen.
Yeah.
Now, I know that 70 millimeter doesn't necessarily mean aspect ratio.
Right.
But for when I hear somebody say 70 millimeter, I'm expecting this like super wide screen that I don't get to see anywhere else. And it's still like a 1.85 to 1 ratio. So it's a box, essentially. There's no widescreen at all. And so I'm like, okay, PTA himself needs to tell me what I am seeing in the 70 millimeter that I'm not seeing in a digital projection that's a smaller screen and all that. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing different to me. So I'm sure somebody on Facebook or whatever is going to say, oh, but here's where you're wrong or whatever. I'm sorry. If there's even the slightest detail that I'm missing from watching a digital projection over the 70 millimeter, I didn't see it.
I don't know. Didn't Tarantino do Hateful Eight in 70 millimeter? Because I saw that print in Chicago. And it was beautiful.
And you may have seen a good version of that. I saw the 70 millimeter, and it was like at the Thoroughbred, which is like 20 miles south of here. Yeah. And they obviously did not know what the fuck they were doing.
Oh, really?
Like, it was like, some things, they were like trying to excuse the fucking presentation before it even started. And
just so you know,
always a good sign.
Yeah, they were saying something like, you'll see a shadow on the bottom of the screen. That's because blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, what a bunch of bullshit.
Theaters had to put signs, or didn't have to, but a bunch of theaters put signs up for The Last Jedi for that hyperspace moment that goes silent because so many people were complaining that the sound had gone out in the movie. And so there's signs on the box office that say The Last Jedi has a few seconds of silence. It's a creative choice.
Yeah, stop being dumb. How do people jump out of the fucking theater that quick? by the way.
I don't
Why
know.
would you leave at that moment?
Like
too?
at that moment, you're like, it's like, oh, there's no sound, and like immediately jump up and run
I
out.
think what it is that and again, it never occurred to me that it was anything other than intentional and awesome.
Yeah.
An awesome use of silence. But I think maybe they were thinking there's some special Star Wars noise, and I don't get to hear it because my print went out in the volume. I don't really know because I don't even think it's pure silence. I think there's kind of like ethereal.
Yeah.
There's definitely some like
noises.
echo or something like that. Yeah.
Those people are straight up dicks.
No, I agree.
Like I hate the just. There is a patience involved sometimes. Like I understand like when we were in watching Last Jedi and the previews were a little bit low or whatever, we should have come out and said something about that. But when like there's actual like things that some things you just should be patient with. And two things I remember in movie theaters that just like it just irked me to no end. I remember Dreamcatcher having an Animatrix thing on the front of it.
Okay.
And so it would play that Animatrix thing, and people would just get up and say, "This is the wrong movie" or whatever. And it's like, do you not? I mean, seriously, I understand maybe not knowing that's on the front or whatever, but. Do you really think you're about to watch some animated Matrix movie that you've never heard of before? That's going to like play for 2 hours? And then like Pitch Black, I believe, was the one that had the weird coloration at the beginning of it. And like so people were coming out saying there's no color on the screen. Like that's possible.
Yeah, we put the grayscale filter on.
Right, exactly.
Fooled you.
Oops, we were playing a black and white movie earlier and we forgot to take that off. But yeah, so I think I would like to know what I'm missing between those two things. Like that theater that I saw, the 70 millimeter, the screen was bigger, but it wasn't any different ratio wise. It wasn't like, oh, look at the detail, and everything. And so, someone's going to have to explain to me because I'm not, as long as I worked in projection and everything, I don't know the difference.
Yeah, no, it looked beautiful. The one at the Belcourt.
I think the digital one looks better, in fact.
It's a gorgeous movie.
I have a spontaneous second rant.
Uh-huh.
Have you guys read about the drive-in theater they're going to build over there near where Top Golf
indoor
is?
one?
Did we already talk about this?
I think maybe just briefly.
Maybe briefly.
It's an indoor drive-through.
Right.
Stupidest fucking idea I've ever heard.
Why do you think that?
Have you seen the renderings? It holds like 50 cars.
Oh, is that it?
It looks like it. Or maybe the rendering, they just made giant cars. I don't know.
Now, if it's
Bring your monster truck in.
There's already a couple drive-ins not far out of town that you can go to if you want that experience. You cannot tell me that sitting in a car with 49 other cars and people in them in an indoor Titans practice bubble building, watching on this screen and whatever they're going to do for audio, you can't tell me that's going to be a good experience. And it's not recreating the drive-in experience. So it's kind of like ruining anything it had going for it.
I don't know. I don't know if that's like the final word, like that's the only way you can experience it, or if it's, like you have one outdoor and one indoor or something like that.
I think the whole thing's indoor for weather reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the weather makes sense.
So they can go year round. Maybe they have an additional one outside.
But you're right. Like if it is all indoor, then you lost the reason.
Yes,
to even go.
And they've got like fake trees and shit. Probably real trees. I don't know, but they've got like trying to make it look like you're outside at a drive-in. But we're in. It's just ever since I read that article, I was like, you goddamn motherfuckers. And like, I have so many better ideas that would make you more money than this. Because especially even if I don't know what they're going to charge. Maybe they're going to charge $50 a car or whatever. But I don't know how you're going to make money from this when it's such a small space. Again, a regular drive-in theater, hundreds of cars.
Yeah, that's true.
And part of the kitsch, I think, is being outdoors, having the top down, the windows down, seeing the stars behind the screen.
Yeah,
being able to walk out of your car and to the concession stand with the movie still playing.
Yeah,
and like you're out in nature and everything, and like. Yeah, I if that is the way it is, then that's really disappointing. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's the way it's going to finally
I'll
be.
double
but,
Google when I get home.
but
and find
that's
out.
that'll be upsetting.
The last drive-in movie I think I went to see was Memoirs of an Invisible Man.
Oh,
I thought you were about to say Geisha, and I was like, what a weird drive-in movie. Like,
not that. Well, I mean, Memoirs of an Invisible Man.
I mean, that makes more sense though. Like Memoirs of a Geisha. Let's go out into nature and watch these women be whores.
There's actually surprisingly little whoring in that movie.
Yeah, very little. Should be more. If it were to be more entertaining, needed more whoring.
I don't think it would have been any better, like, because originally Spielberg was going to make that movie.
Mhm.
I don't think it would have been any
Yeah,
better.
Spielberg was like, nah, I can't do anything with this.
Was this Ang Lee?
No,
No, it was Rob Marshall.
Rob Marshall, yeah.
Rob Marshall.
The guy who gave us Chicago!
Yeah, and gave us 9. We were just Chris and I was talking about
Oh, I've never seen 9.
that. It's the only Daniel Day-Lewis performance I think I've never seen.
He's in, I thought that, wait, I was thinking of the animated,
That's the 9. This is 9.
oh.
It's a musical
well.
directed by Rob Marshall.
Oh,
Now I'm
and
even-
V9 was actually pretty good. I
Yeah,
think.
Is that the one with Elijah Wood?
I'm not sure who was.
He's like a futuristic, like, burlap puppet.
It's got like Coraline style.
Yeah,
animation.
yeah. Yeah, I have never seen it.
Yeah.
Glad we talked about it for so long.
yes.
You have a rant?
I do. All right. So what I've been noticing recently is a similar thing that keeps coming up in your watches, Chris.
Mhm.
The protagonists argue before the end of the film climax.
Mhm.
Ah.
This happens all the fucking time. And like it always just bugs me because it always seems unnecessary. Very few times is this necessary.
Mhm.
Things like Moana. When Moana and Maui start arguing and he jumps off and does whatever, only to Han Solo in at the end of the movie. Completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Girls Trip that we
Yeah.
just did recently.
Which is with the most egregious, I think, because of how artificial that setup is.
Exactly. Because, I mean, the whole thing is that she sold this picture when everybody knows that she didn't sell this picture.
Yeah, yeah.
She's saying that she didn't. And then that turns into a whole thing. Now, that's almost believable, the conflict between Queen Latifah and Regina Hall. But then, like, Jada Pinkett Smith and Tiffany Haddish, like, start screaming at each other.
Yeah.
And there's all this shit going on. It's like, let's see, there's 30 minutes left in the movie. Now she's going to do some speech at the end where they all rally together to support her or something like that. And it's like, that's not necessary. There's so many examples of this. Boss Baby was one of them, too. Secret Life of Pets was one of them,
Yeah.
too. It has this.
Mhm.
Captain America Civil War, obviously, right
Well, the
before
whole-
that. And
yeah.
actually, the Avengers, too, basically.
Yeah.
They've all got this shit. Guardians of the Galaxy, both Guardians of the Galaxy, fucking Bad Moms, Rough. I finally watched Rough Night, by the way. That was a
I
terrible
watched
fucking
that.
movie.
Oh, my God. And I like a lot of the people in that movie.
Oh, it's bad.
I like it. It's like they got together and said, let's make a shitty movie and
Yeah.
just make some money.
Yeah,
And
it
not
makes
work
no
very
sense.
hard.
But there's a scene right before, right on time, 75% through the movie, where literally they start arguing, and it's that whole thing. Well, we wouldn't have done this if you hadn't done this. Well, I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't done that. And everybody's fucking fighting for no reason. Then, like 5 minutes later, oh, we're back on the same side.
Same
again.
thing with the night before. That
Yeah, exactly.
Seth Rogen Christmas movie.
Exactly.
Like Gordon Levitt ends up beating up Santa Clauses or getting beat up by Santa Claus. They're all separated and
Right.
fighting and angry till they get back to the weed party.
Yeah, I'm sure there are examples that I'm not thinking of where it's necessary for, the tensions have been simmering this entire time, and it finally comes to a head. They cool off and they remind themselves that they need to be together at the end.
Yeah.
Sure, there's probably a couple of those, but it doesn't fucking happen very often
There are-
relative to how many times this cliche is used.
There are ways to establish conflict that don't even necessarily have to do with dialogue.
Yeah.
Or the characters themselves.
Yeah.
Like that's another one of those crutches where they're like, I feel like the writers think they have to have something break them apart to bring them back together, as though if we don't get that, we're not fulfilled. Where you can have 3 or 4 heroes together going through something that is conflict without fighting with each other about it.
Yeah.
And I just think it's used way too much.
For example, Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2.
Okay.
Volume 2. whatever it is.
Mostly I've forgotten this movie already.
Well, I mean, yes, we realize that Peter is like really wanting to be with his dad and he's fallen under his spell and all that stuff. But the whole divisiveness of Rocket and of Gamora and all that stuff. Like, that just doesn't need to be there. They can be like, hey, man, we really need to save. And Peter can still be going through his own thing, but they can be united, basically. Girls Trip, it has nothing to do with the outcome. It literally, their conflict at the end isn't even referenced.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, and I haven't seen Rough Night, but I'm assuming that the situation that they're in, according to the trailer, is plenty enough conflict to get into the third act without having any arguments or anything like that. This is what I call the romantic comedy setup, by the way. This is what in every romantic comedy there is. Usually, it's two people who hate each other, then they find they like each other because of one thing that somebody does for someone. It's usually the dude, and it's usually like, giving charity to orphans or something like that. and then they have their dating thing. The second act sets up basically like that thread of a conflict that's going to happen for the third act. There's always like this argument that happens in the bridge those acts, and then it's like the whole like third act is that person coming up to some sort of realization, oh, I need to tell them this and sorry or whatever, and then it'll all be okay. And it's usually like sometimes it's things that you can't get back from. I don't understand. Like, there's no way to get that relationship back, but they're like, oh, if I say sorry, everything's good. I remember this is a really fucking obscure movie, but it just popped into my head. Opportunity Knocks. Dana Carvey, essentially, like, the whole movie has been lying to this girl that he's like with the entire time, and then she finds out that he's a con man, and like in the third act, it's basically him just stalking her and going, "I love you, I love you, look at me, I love you," all that, and finally she's like, "Okay." She goes through all the reasons why she shouldn't be with this kid. Like, hey, you lied to me, and you're like a con man, and all this other stuff. Okay, you love me.
Yeah. That's the same thing in Wedding Crashers. Where essentially he's stalking her the whole time. I'll give you one believable example, actually, is in La La Land, where they do subvert this, because they have this, there's a divergence of worlds between Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone once he takes that gig with John Legend.
Yeah.
And even though they're not seen really like butting up against each other, you do see her like just sitting at home when he's on the road and stuff like that. And then why I think this was beautifully done is that she comes in and he's off of tour, like he took a day off to make dinner for. You think this is going to set up some really, really sweet scene because the whole movie has been sweet up until then.
Yeah.
And then music drops. It's just bare. It's fucking in your face. And it just escalates, like, surprisingly.
Yeah.
And then when she leaves, that relationship is forever damaged. Just like what you said, it normally gets fixed with one word or something like that. It's done.
Yeah.
That even though he comes over and he tells her about the audition and everything, which again is beautifully done, they're not romantic after that.
No.
And then they have that wonderful scene in the park. And then the ending, of course, which is brilliant too. But yeah, that's maybe the most believable instance of this conflict before the climax.
And you also reminded me of Chasing Amy does this too, where the whole time Ben Affleck is sitting there going, well, if I just have experiences like Joey Lauren Adams does, then everything will be even,
right,
and will be good. And he doesn't realize that asking her to do the things that he's going to ask her to do is fucking like ridiculous.
Exactly.
Exactly. And there's a really great scene at the end of Chasing Amy too, where they see each other and it's sort of like a silent, between those two, sort of like, talking to each other, like, like, we're still cool. We can never be dating again, but
which is realistic. That's how relationships work in the real world, where like you may run into an ex that, maybe did something horrible. You had a falling out, whatever. And for me, it's never the same. Like you can say, oh, wow, how are things going? I'm glad things are going well for you. Or if things are shitty, I'm kind of a little bit glad too. But like, it's never going to rekindle that stuff.
I had a girlfriend in high school whose birthday was a month after mine, and I was ready to break up with her, but I waited until my birthday so I could get a gift, and then I broke up with her so I wouldn't have to get her one. I hope I never run into her again.
That's awesome.
She might be carrying a grudge. I was only 16.
She was only 16 years old. Chasing, Kevin Smith was on Twitter the other day and said, very explicitly that Clerks 2 is his favorite movie.
Yeah, saw that.
Mm-hmm.
And mentioned something else that was the most fun to make. But I don't think he talks about Chasing Amy as like one of his favorite. And I think really it probably is the best thing he's done.
I think it is. I that's the best movie. I think the movie that's most watchable is Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Yeah, for very different reasons.
Right. And then after that, I would put his Clerks there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Clerks 2, man, it just there's funny moments in Clerks 2 for sure. But I don't know. I get kind of like, I don't know. It starts to really be a put off with the donkey show and the Christian kid that keeps just being really awkward about pussy troll and all that type of stuff. I just that I like. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of that in Clerks 2. Where
He said Clerks 2 is his favorite of the movies he's made, and Red State is the one he thinks is the best.
That's right. Yeah, and Red State was enjoyable.
I didn't hate
for what
it.
it was. Yeah,
it was definitely not a typical Kevin Smith kind of thing.
Well, that's the thing I like about Red State is that it sort of stretched him out and everything. He was able to go, and I'd put Red State pretty high up on his list too. Because it's not the best movie in the world, but for what he's trying to do there, and especially what he was trying to do behind the scenes with Red State, where he was trying to distribute it on his own and not worry about the studios and everything. I was really, really impressed with what he did with that, even though it's not like a movie like I got to watch this every day or anything like that.
I saw on Reddit the other day, I don't remember which movie it was. It was probably Chasing Amy. But early in his career, and I'd forgotten all about this, but like there were people protesting. No, it was Dogma. They were protesting Dogma, and he got interviewed on the local news as a protester. Like he went out there. I'll have to find and send you this link. But the news interviewed him, not realizing he was the director of the film, and he's saying the same shit all these other people are saying about how terrible this film is. Keeping a straight face. It made me love him even more.
The subtitle is Kevin S.
This is a tangent, but I was watching some I guess supercut of like best I don't know, comebacks or something like that to interviewers or whatever. One of them wasn't necessarily a comeback. It was, I guess it was, but this guy's about to interview Samuel L. Jackson, and I guess it's right after the Super Bowl, and he says something like, "What'd you think about that Super Bowl ad?" And Samuel Jackson's like, "What Super Bowl ad?" Because he wasn't in the Super Bowl ad. And he said something like, "You talking about that movie with Lawrence Fishburne?" He's like, "Not all black people look alike, man." And the guy was like sitting there going, "Yeah, I messed that up. I don't know. I messed that up."
You want to do some news?
News on the mark.
Stand by for news.
News
in the news.
Stand by for news.
Were you recording when I was in here by myself and you guys were out there?
No.
Good. I may or may not have done an operatic version of Ed Sheeran's Perfect.
Oh, nice. The Andrea Bocelli version?
No, more just like, oh. Anyway.
So I was reading that I got a couple here about Star Wars The Last Jedi, in fact. So Star Wars The Last Jedi is not doing well in China. It's not doing well at all. Like, in fact, the 3 Star Wars that they've come out with, The Force Awakens did the most business. But even it sort of like trailed off and did nothing. And then Rogue One went like dropped some more. And then now this Last Jedi has dropped even more. And it made $28 million on its opening weekend, made $2 million the following week.
Jesus.
And it's an interesting study into cultures far as movies are concerned. Apparently, back when the original Star Wars trilogy came out, China basically didn't ever watch those movies. Mm-hmm. They didn't have that, all of us in here grew up with Star Wars. And knowing the mythologies and all these other type of things that are going on. Chinese people basically didn't.
Right.
So they don't have that all like ingrained into them. And apparently, and I haven't really noticed this. You have to really know a lot about that original trilogy when you're watching Force Awakens and Last Jedi and everything like that.
Yeah.
So
it's also just not the juggernaut to them if they've never seen the, you know what I mean? Like, I think I made the crack that Last Jedi didn't even need to put out trailers, and it would have made a shit ton of money here because it was Star Wars. Well, they don't have that cultural connection, so they're looking at whatever the marketing is.
But I just think that's really interesting because they have not established that. Now I do wonder, they have to have seen a lot of these, and it does sound like I'm being insensitive here, but a lot of these people have probably seen the original Star Wars at this point.
Sure. I mean, even accidentally, you would have to.
But they weren't wrapped up in that, like, just it being everywhere and like seeing people play with toys and all other type of stuff. It requires a little bit more, I think, to get ingrained into your system and everything. And we grew up through that.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't. So, maybe they're establishing, I don't know. It's hard to establish a new base of fans when the new movies require you to really be on board with the original trilogy as well.
I guess so. It's the difference between 40 years of influence versus 20 years, essentially, because I assume that Phantom Menace had to have been kind of a big thing overseas too, particularly in China. Maybe not.
I think it's really been only in the last 10, 15 years that China has opened, because China strictly controls what will and will not play in cinemas in their country, and there are plenty of movies that don't get in just because I think they set a number now, and it's been growing. But so I don't know. I don't know if the prequel trilogy played over in China.
Interesting, but yeah, even if you were exposed to the prequels, that doesn't inform necessarily the last couple that we've seen.
That means you got a missing middle part of.
It's almost as if
story.
there was a piece that was in a droid that could project a piece that was projected from another droid. And you could fill in that gap, and figure out where Luke Skywalker is.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know where you were going there for a second. I also think China has centuries of history and culture that we don't, and that a lot of that ancient culture has fantasy elements to it. When you see stuff like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and then sort of the magical powers, some of the old kung fu or samurais, maybe this is not, because we don't have that. Our country's history is, guys with muskets and funny hats. And, there's no fantasy element to America's settling and founding. We don't have those stories passed on for generations and generations. And maybe they feel like we're kind of ripping them off. Because the Jedi are kind of like kung fu samurai, really. And, there's no denying Darth Vader was basically built around the idea of a samurai with the helmet and all that stuff. I don't know. Maybe I just think it's fascinating because it's down to the minute details. Some cultures don't shake hands. Some shake hands everywhere. Some don't do eye contact just unless you're familiar, and some do, and some are super punctual, and some are not. And it just fascinates me how we're all in this together, even though we're completely different.
Yeah,
completely.
You're
different.
right. I mean, it may be something where that's nothing new. Lightsabers, who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. We've had lightsabers for the last.
We invented that
years.
shit. The other thing about the Star Wars: The Last Jedi that I thought was interesting, Ryan Johnson apparently responded to some people who were like, hologram Luke is totally against the ideology of Star Wars and all this other type of stuff. So a lot of people were railing against him on that. So he did a series of tweets. The first one was a couple of googly eyes looking in one direction. And then the next tweet was a picture of his bookshelf. And then another one was closer to the bookshelf. Then he's pulling out a book. And the book's like, it's some sort of like, Jedi text or something like that people have written that I've never seen them, but I'm sure they're official books that Star Wars geeks love. And he opens up the book. And then there's shows a paragraph where it shows this is possible.
I even saw a quote where he said something along the lines of, the first time you saw Darth Vader choke somebody with the Force, you didn't know prior to that was possible.
Yeah.
Like nobody gave you all the rules ever in any of these movies. So, and I think that's a good defense as well.
Yeah. And it's not like, I'm kind of surprised that there are people coming out and saying, no, you can't do that, and so on and so forth, even with what you've seen in just the movies. Because in the movies, that's made sense to me. I don't read a lot of Star Wars books, but it's not like this was something that, yes, they had never done that in any Star Wars movie before, but you thought maybe it would be possible.
Exactly. I mean, look, there's a lot of stuff wrong with that movie that we've talked about many
Right.
times. Plot points and things like that you can pick on. I'm totally on board with whatever the fucking Force can do, because not only, and they actually explain this in the film, it's not the Jedi's Force, it's everybody's Force. You can manipulate it in all kinds of ways that you didn't know.
Yeah.
That is the most believable part of that movie.
Yeah.
The one defense I saw him make was that I didn't get on board with was the Princess Leia thing, because he was trying to explain that her use of the Force there is not actually all that strong because there's very little drag resistance in space, and so she wouldn't need to be a powerful Force wielder. All she really has to do is nudge herself, and then she'll float.
Yeah,
because it's space.
I don't feel like that's what he originally thought when he did.
No.
that.
I think that's one of those. How can I explain this?
Yeah.
Drag resistance.
Yeah, it's the fact remains. It just looks stupid. Like it sort of just take your lumps on that one.
All right. So for news, I have a few items to choose from, but I did find it fascinating to read that they're going to build a Studio Ghibli theme park. Now, I've only seen a handful of Studio Ghibli films. I know they're insanely beloved by film fans all over the world. There's a very distinct style. There's a very early Pixar-like consistency to the quality of the films, almost where Studio Ghibli can come out with anything. And fans of their previous movies are going to go flock to see this thing. And you said The Red Turtle is a Studio Ghibli film, right?
Believe it is. Yeah.
So a theme park. Now, I've seen the trailers for most of these movies, and it's some weird and wild shit.
Yeah.
And I think a theme park based on some of that might scare the bejesus out of me.
Well, yeah, especially what was it? Was it Princess Mononoke, or was it? I think it was Princess Mononoke that had all the like weird little forest spirits that would show up.
Oh, I think you're right.
It's either
because that's one I have seen.
that one or Spirited Away.
Well, I think
it's Spirited Away.
Spirited Away also, isn't there a theme park in Spirited Away? Like, it's part of the story?
Oh, well, I wonder if they'll build a ride based on a ride.
It
in
may
that?
be. He's in like some sort of fantastical. It's been forever since I've seen Spirited
Yeah.
Away. But yeah, no, there's some weird shit in there,
Like,
but I
I know
bet it'd be
that-
awesome.
I'm not sure if those movies had an amusement park. I know Howl's Moving Castle has the castle.
Yeah.
But like I don't know about the. Yeah, I think it's one of those movies that has like an amusement park. You're right.
I thought we hit a saturation point with theme parks there for a while.
Right.
Because, like, didn't the Euro Disney not do very good, leading to the Simpsons to make fun of it?
Correct. Yeah.
And,
Although-
we are open for business.
Yeah. And there's nobody there. Yeah, that was
There is an amusement park in Spirited Away.
Yeah. There was that Euro Disney. I mean, it's still
I think
open,
it is.
right?
But there's one that they built that closed, I think. But
Japan.
No, Japan is doing well.
But then the Harry Potter park, I think, has sort of shifted the thinking, because that was so successful.
Yeah.
And they've built one now at both Universal, West Coast and Florida. And, Universal added like a whole Simpsons land to their park where you can go into Moe's and do the love tester and all that stuff.
Have you been there?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It
I didn't realize
it
that's
was
there.
the only cool thing in that entire park. Like, I'm so not the guy for Universal theme, because it's all like indoor roller coasters with 1.5 mile lines, and I'm just
Fuck much of that.
no, fuck all that noise. And now they've built this Star Wars land at Disney, and I think there's an Avatar land somewhere, or there's gonna be.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an attempt now to revive, because most of the theme parks around the U.S. have started dwindling. Like the Six Flags, a few of them have closed, and they're not doing the kind of business they used to. Probably because roller coasters alone are not enough. You have to have an experience now. Because when I was at Harry Potter World, you could buy a wand that had a chip in it, and there are places all over the Harry Potter world where you can interact with the park. You can go up to a store window and wave your wand, and like a ghost face appears and talks
that's
to you and
awesome.
all this shit. Yeah, and like, if you're a Harry Potter nerd and you're a kid, you're like basically living in that world. So I could see something like a Studio Ghibli park doing well, but I don't know where they're going to put it. But I'm almost certain it won't be Cleveland.
Well, yes, definitely. My guess is that they'd probably try to find an LA place, because Studio Ghibli is owned by Disney.
Oh, are they?
Like, at
Like
least,
everything else.
at least
damn.
Disney. I mean, Disney owns the
Let's
stuff
see
here.
here. I'll
They
tell
may
you.
not own it overseas.
I'll
But,
flip the script. They're going to build it in Tokyo.
oh, okay, makes sense.
I think, man, If I went to Tokyo, there'd be a lot of stuff on my to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
If I was there for like 2 weeks, I would probably go to this theme park.
Oh, yeah. I would definitely go.
I mean, if it's not going to be built till like 2020.
All right. Well, I've got that long to save up.
Your trip.
Yeah, that's right.
I would want to do. I just want to see Hong Kong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the Dark Knight really made. I'm a huge like cityscape skyline kind of geek. Every single time I drive north of the city on 65, I look. That's my favorite angle of the Nashville skyline from the north. And that movie made me fall in love with Hong Kong skyline, and it's probably like New York City times 10.
Yeah, it's apparently one of the most technologically advanced cities in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see the building Batman jumped off.
There's that too.
And I'll walk around the streets of Hong Kong going, dun, 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 dun. Anyway.
Okay, so my news item is a little bit sensitive, but there's just been so much coverage and it's fascinated me. So right as we were going to see Phantom Thread on Sunday, I saw a thing pop up on my phone that Aziz Ansari has been accused of sexual misconduct.
Yep.
Okay, so everybody that we like has some sort of story that's going to come out. I mean, this is basically the world that we're living in right now. I don't want to make light of that, of course. But Aziz Ansari has always promoted himself as being kind of a feminist comedian. Mm-hmm. Certainly more so than like the old guard of like Andrew Dice Clay and all that shit. Mm-hmm. And so this was surprising, especially because a lot of Master of None seems like it's autobiographical, and he goes into like how clumsy relationships and dates and things like that can be. And he's been pretty open. He wrote a book on relationships called Modern Romance. And so there was this thing on this fringe website, I think fairly fringe website called babe.com or whatever it is. And this person gives an account of a date with Aziz Ansari, and the content of her story is a little disturbing to me. Taken at that value, it seems like shit's not right. It doesn't look right. Now, that's just my perspective. What I did not expect was the way that this shit was going to be covered. Because, okay, of course, like anytime something comes out, people are going to be defended or vilified, and on two different camps and everything. But this one in particular, because the description was so very, very detailed, that people really had strong opinions about this. There was a feature in the New York Times that said that he did nothing wrong. There's a feature there was an opinion in the Washington Post saying that he did nothing wrong.
Because I think one of those headlines was the only thing he did wrong was not know how to read minds.
Right. He wasn't a mind reader, and then the other one described it as a bad date.
But let me tell you this, and this is a scary topic to me.
Mm-hmm.
How do you not know whether a girl wants to give you a blowjob or not?
Right.
Yeah.
How can there be any confusion? Because the James Franco stuff is very similar in that no one's accusing him of rape, but kind of acting sexual misconduct, if you will. A blowjob happened that the girl wasn't comfortable. I
don't know, man.
I mean, this is one of those cases I almost wish had never come out, just because it's muddying up everything. And I think the people, like there's some woman on Headline News thrashed this accuser.
Yep.
You've done damage to the Me Too movement. I don't think that's true.
I don't either.
I think the backlash against her has been too strong, and I don't think you can say he didn't do anything wrong because he got a blowjob that she didn't want to give.
Yeah.
How?
It seems, and when you read the first-hand account, which sadly it took me a while to actually get to the first-hand account because I was going through all these op-eds.
Yeah.
And then I read it. Now, some problems with it is, it was not very well reported. It wasn't very well written. There was a little bit of like opinion in there from the writer. And so there was things wrong with the article.
And it was anonymous. And here's the biggest problem with all of this is they reached out to her.
Yeah, that's a
They
big
heard a
deal, too.
rumor from somebody who worked in their office that something had happened, and they went after her.
Right.
And that unsettles me. That we now have publications who are not waiting for news, but creating it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's troubling because it does sort of lend credence to the idea that, well, can we trust everything in this account?
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, with all of these things, we don't prove of any of it.
Yeah.
Yet. We may eventually. They're investigating Kevin Spacey on like 3 different crimes and Harvey Weinstein on several crimes. But a lot of these stories we're never going to know.
Right. And that's the whole point of the Me Too thing, is that this is to be believed instead of pushing it under the rug like has happened for so many years.
Well, man, Matt Damon got crucified. And all he said was there's a difference between rape and pinching a butt.
Yeah.
And, you have to know the culture in which you're saying things.
Mm-hmm.
And he probably should have said it differently or not at all. But he didn't say anything wrong.
Yeah, I mean, the way he said it and the content of it seemed dismissive, I think, was the main thing against
his tone was more about it than...
Yeah, I think that played a big role.
Okay, and that's, that's part of it.
And then he came out and just said, you know what?
I should keep my big mouth shut. Yeah, and he should have, but... And here we are talking about it, not keeping our big mouth shut. But, I just the whole thing is getting murky and murky and murky, and
Well, that's the point of this, is that...
If she was assaulted, she should have justice.
Right.
There's no question about that.
Right. So why is this being so divisively covered, is my point. I guess maybe because it's so detailed, because they say...
Part
they
of it
can
is
pick out and say,
because
No.
he texted her the next day, I had a good time with you, and she said, well, I didn't really like how everything went down, and
Right.
he said, I'm very sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the story broke, his quotes were, I took her words to heart.
Yeah.
We had a misunderstanding, and I felt really terrible.
Mm-hmm.
My point is, I don't know how you can misunderstand a blowjob,
But
unless you're Chris Cooper in American Beauty.
Isn't this exactly though what the whole thing, what we're talking about here is that people have put, Matt Damon put it very succinctly by saying, it was a difference between rape and pinching an ass or whatever. We do grade certain things as worse or not as bad or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the question is, are we, at a point now where we're, anybody who's mentioned is going to have their careers ruined.
Mm-hmm.
And, does Aziz Ansari deserve what Harvey Weinstein gets? Is that it? That's, we're all putting like grades in all of this thing. And he should have known by what her body language was that this wasn't cool. But I don't know. We weren't in the room. We don't know.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying I don't believe her. I'm just saying we don't know what exactly happened. I'm not trying to say that she's wrong or that she, I'm not trying to get to that point. Where I'm not, I need to see the evidence, damn it. Which is what a lot of people say. And I'm like, what evidence are you hoping to find?
Yeah.
Like her saying it is good enough, right?
Right.
But still, we don't know exactly what the situation was. So, I mean, celebrities are probably in this situation hundreds of times in a year. And like one time went one way and this one went another way.
Yeah.
It might be his methodology and it didn't work this time
right.
or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. It really surprised me. This, and maybe that's why we're having this conversation, is this one, partially because he's so likable. Yeah, he's funny and he's pretty well respected. There wasn't a groundswell yet of more people coming out and saying, yeah, this happened in my experience with him too. But it really surprised me that this story caught so much of a polar opposite reaction from venerated news entities like New York Times, Washington Post, like coming out the next day and saying, you know what, this is some bullshit.
Well, and ultimately, here's another thing that I take out of this. I'm tired of black and white.
Yeah.
I'm tired of this.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say anything without there being somebody who's completely on one side going, oh, you can't, you're immediately attacked. And that's why we don't have good dialogue in this country, at least. Yeah. Because you can't play devil's advocate. You can't say here's some gray area or whatever, because there's people firmly in the white and the black.
Right.
And
there was a group of like 100 French feminists, prominent ones, that like released a statement condemning the Me Too movement and basically saying they were attacking the ass slap or whatever.
Bridget Bardot was one of them.
Yeah, and so everybody's got their own take. At the end of the day, where I would like to get to is that no woman ever has to do anything sexual she does not want to do.
Yep.
And I don't think we're going to get there. I think we're going to pretend to get there with all this noise going on around it. Like, You know what I mean? You don't think there's still a guy out there who's going to do something inappropriate to a woman tomorrow?
Absolutely.
It's not like we put a stop to all of this.
We may have to do the thing that Dave Chappelle does in Chappelle Show, where he's like dating Rashida Jones in one sketch and like basically coming up with the contract and saying, okay, are you going to be having sex with me tonight? Yes, I will be having sex with you tonight. Okay. And he's like, how about anal? And he's like, and she's like, no. And he's like, oh, okay.
Well, and there was a whole thing not long after I got out of college where colleges were doing this like consent talk thing where students were, the code of the handbook or whatever was that you had to, I forget, there was one school that was very famous about this, that you had to ask, is it okay if I kiss you? Is it okay if I take your shirt off? Is it like you had to do all this stuff, completely taking any and all passion out of the environment.
Exactly.
I never really, I'll be honest, I never really had trouble knowing whether a girl with me, who was with me wanted to do stuff or not.
Mm-hmm.
I never really had that problem. And I never really pushed beyond what I thought the boundaries were in that particular environment.
Right.
I don't know how you can have a misunderstanding about a blowjob.
I don't know.
And if it does get to a point where, hands wander and so on and so forth, usually they're like, nope, and it's like, okay, yeah, hands off.
The problem is that centuries of this, male-dominated culture have taught women who find themselves in situations like this that it may be scary to try and stop the man, or may ruin your career if he decides to badmouth you. I'm not saying Aziz would do any of that stuff or should be accused of it, but I'm saying I can understand why this person wanted to stay anonymous, and I can understand there being circumstances where famous guy moves in to kiss you. You don't want to kiss him, but you don't want to ruin your life. And later on, you regret it. And it's so fucking murky.
Yeah, it is.
It's so murky, and it shouldn't be. It should be a very simple concept, which it's just not, because men are pigs.
Yeah. It is interesting how this is getting covered.
It is. Yeah. And I think maybe we should just stop.
Yeah. Well, as it was when was at the Critics' Choice Awards, Kumail Nanjiani got on the stage, and he was like, "I think as men we should just shut up and just listen, and that's it. We just shut up, and that's we don't need to say anything. We need to contribute anything, just listen."
How about some recommendations?
Recommendations.
Totes Amazeballs.
There, go right.
It won the Academy Award
Oh, for what?
for best movie ever made.
I got one.
What do you got?
I got a movie called Cold Souls.
Okay.
You seen this movie?
Souls.
Paul Giamatti. He's married to Emily Watson,
I don't know.
the girl from Red Dragon. I think that's her.
Yeah.
Fascinating premise. David Strathairn's in it. Basically, Paul Giamatti is playing Paul Giamatti, and it's like a fictionalized version of himself, but it's him. His name's Paul Giamatti. All the films he's been in, many of them are referenced, and he's doing this play, and he's basically lost his mojo as an actor. And kind of like Total Recall and Arnold at the Recall place, he finds himself at this or like
Eternal Sunshine.
Eternal Sunshine. He finds himself at this place that promises fantastical technology where they can extract his soul. His soul has become twisted, and they need to extract it and let him live without it for a couple of weeks to reset, and then put it back in, and he'll find his mojo again. And there's like, the souls are kept in these glass jars, and like he's looking at, there's like, they're all around the office of David Strathairn, like a museum almost. He's like, that one was a 13th century Mongolian warrior or whatever. This is a celebrity, or what have you. And so he reluctantly goes through with it. And you see him going through his day-to-day, because he basically turns into this blank slate. I feel pretty good. I don't really feel anything. I'm just kind of confused. And his wife pretty quick notices something's wrong with him. And he confesses to her what he's done. And she's kind of a little bit horrified that he would remove his soul without telling her. He goes to get his soul back in, and they've misplaced it. And I'm basically giving away too much of the movie now, but I have to for the premise sake. They didn't misplace it. They're running an underground soul market. And there's a really wealthy gangster criminal Russian guy whose hot model girlfriend is on a soap opera and wants to be a better actress. So they bought Paul Giamatti's soul and put it in her. And she loves it. And so basically, Noomi Rapace is in this, and she's a mule. So she basically gets souls put in her, goes across the ocean, uses a fake fingerprint thing and a fake name to come into the country, and then the soul is delivered, and she does the same thing going back. She's like a soul mule. The premise is why I'm so excited about this, because I don't think the movie's all that great. I enjoyed watching it.
That's a great premise.
It's kind of like In Time. Great premise, execution not quite up to par. Now, I can always watch Paul Giamatti.
Right.
And the more schlubby and depressed he gets, the better, in my opinion. But basically, he has to go to Russia to try and convince this guy to let him have his soul back. The guy says no. They kidnap the girl. They forcefully take her soul out, put it back in Giamatti. And then at the end, Noomi Rapace he goes to buy Noomi Rapace's original soul back for her as a kind gesture because she helped him so much. And she doesn't have any room left because every time you take a soul out, a little fragment is left behind. And she's been a mule so many times, she's like 95% full of soul fragments.
It's like Voldemort.
And she'll never have her soul back. Anyway, I had never heard of this movie.
No, when did this come out?
2009.
Yeah, okay. 2009.
Interesting.
I don't know who wrote it, directed it. It's just one of those things where I'm flipping through the movie channels. If I see a title I don't recognize, I'll go, oh, who's in this? Paul Giamatti. All right, well, I'll check this out. And then I got hooked by that premise because nothing else about the movie is like set in the future. It's like basically real time, but they have the ability to extract your soul.
That's interesting. It's got a little bit of like being John Malkovich.
A little bit.
Sounds like it in there,
It's
too.
not played anywhere near as quirky. It's played more as a drama. It just has this cool premise underneath it.
Interesting.
Looks like somebody named Sophie Barths wrote and directed it. Really, the only one of the only high-profile movies she has on her resume. Madame Bovary did an adaptation of Madame Bovary in 2014. But yeah, there you go.
Anyway, there you go. I know you guys like you some Giamatti.
Yeah, no, totally.
I think I briefly heard about this because of him playing himself, essentially. Yeah. Way back when this came out and everything, and I just I didn't have an outlet to go watch it at the time. So,
all right, recommend me something.
So I don't get into network sitcoms, and I would have never watched this movie if it wasn't for the fact that at the Critics' Choice Awards, TV show, I was at the table of the people who produce and act in Fresh Off the Boat.
Oh,
yeah.
I had never heard of this show before, which was so disappointing to me because I can't relate to. I mean, now I had seen Randall Park before. He's in The Interview. He's Kim Jong-un. And he's also in Veep. He's like one of the candidates that goes up against Selena Meyer. And he's in a ton of things. You've seen Randall Park like in a ton of comedies before. But he was at the table, and the woman who plays his wife, Constance Wu, was at the table, and then a couple of producers who were really funny guys, just like hanging. You know, they were like talking to us, and it was me and Aaron at the table and everything, talking to us and everything. And so, I mean, immediately I was like, I'm sorry to say I've never seen your show. Where can I see it and all that? And he was like, it's ABC and all that. So it was unfortunate, mainly now because I started watching the show and like now like love these characters and everything. Now it would have been nice to be like, you know, like I love this and that and whatever about the show. And I don't watch sitcoms anymore because I feel like that's been played out a lot.
Yeah.
Even this, it was uncomfortable starting to watch one of these because I haven't in so long. Most comedies I watch are like HBO and, you know, like there's a little bit more edge to them. This has really no edge at all. It's a family comedy. But I got into it pretty quickly. It's really funny. It's covering this Asian family as they move from Washington D.C. to Orlando, and the father, Randall Park, wants to open up his own restaurant that's basically Golden Corral, and like people are like, you know, it's definitely Golden Corral. No, it's totally not Golden. And in the show they call it Golden Saddle to you know confuse to not do trademarks and stuff like that. But one of the early funniest jokes though is that Constance Wu plays the wife, and she's like the mom, and she's like helping him run the restaurant. And Paul Scheer is playing a like the host, and he's like a terrible host or whatever. But she's like this real like, you know, we need to save money, we need to really tighten things. So like any little like cost in the restaurant, she's like hawking it. Like, you know, it's like Randall Park says something about like clogging up the salt and pepper shaker so people can't like put more salt and pepper in. And then but there's a point where she's like turned around and she goes, he's like, is he eating a crouton? Like she could hear it all the way across the, and like it was talking about Paul Scheer eating a crouton. And like, he's like, he stole a crouton, and he's like, he comes up on it, and he's obviously keeping his mouth closed. And he's like trying not to bite it. And she goes, "You're trying to dissolve the crouton." And it's stuff like that. And the kids in it are really good too. The kids are really funny. It's mainly this one kid. That's his story. It's kind of got an Everybody Hates Chris, Malcolm in the Middle type of feel to it and everything. But it's mainly following this kid and like sort of his adventures through school and everything. But the parents, man, they're so funny, and they got nominated for their work, you know. And being at this table with Constance Wu and Randall Park, like I was hearing stuff that she was saying and everything. I was like, God, she is funny, man. Yeah. She is funny, man. And like, I can't wait to see this. And just like the character that she's playing on this is way different from what I saw at the table, but still super funny and everything. So would recommend that show. I've gotten through the first season, which was 13 episodes. And then after that, they got the full run. So I'm in season 2 right now. I would recommend it. And
you mentioned sitcoms being played out. Like, I think there's just I think that format needs to die. We need to just stop, because it's almost like everything's set in grooves, and they're just gonna, like, the same stories keep. I'm stuttering a lot, but I actually have a document I've started. I've talked to my wife about this a lot, of plot things that happen in both Friends episodes and Seinfeld episodes. And there are dozens.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's an episode where George gets his clothes stolen by a woman.
Yeah.
There's an episode where Chandler gets his clothes stolen by a woman. It's Julia Roberts.
Oh, yeah.
There's an episode where Seinfeld can't cry and show sad emotions, and then once he opens it up, he can't turn it off. That happens to Chandler in an episode of Friends. And I even said to my wife, no one's ripping anybody off here. These shows were largely running around the same time, even for most of Seinfeld's run, and Friends ran later. But I just think there's only so many human stories to tell in this well of sitcom gadgets that we have.
I don't know, man. Yes, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of overlap in the prestige drama, too. I was reading that Breaking Bad oral history that I sent you guys yesterday, and Vince Gilligan admitted that the Fly episode was a bottle episode. Yeah. And it was like, that's a standard trope when you're out of money. We were out of money. That's all we could do. And yes, you know, we had Ryan Johnson come on to direct it. And we had this wonderful dialogue, this wonderful script for it. But the methodology was essentially the same as everything that's been used before. So I think there are ways to reinvent it. And yes, there is overlap in something like with Friends and Seinfeld, especially because they were around the same
Mostly,
era.
I mean, though, network sitcoms. It's surprising to me to hear that this one's on ABC and it's actually funny, because I think the network sitcoms are just copy-pasting. Like, I don't need to see whatever that show Joey from Friends is on. I don't need to see Kevin Can Wait.
Last Man Standing.
I don't need to see any of those shows, because I could probably predict every beat as I'm watching it, because they're just carbon copies.
You're talking about a certain type of sitcom, and I do agree with you on that. Now, things like Fresh Off the Boat, I only caught like half of an episode when it was on last week. But Blackish is a completely different type of
maybe I just haven't watched enough
too.
sitcoms lately.
Well, I don't blame you, because, again, we collectively, all three of us, don't watch those things because of the other options that are available. Why would you sit through? There's no must-see TV. Why would you sit through commercials and all that stuff?
And I just saw the opening episode of The Good Place, which is another one that people had been telling me about, and I was like, "Geez, this is good too."
Exactly.
And the other part of it, this is what we're about to get into, is that the time is hard to get it. With a Netflix show, 10 episodes, you get through that really fast. Even a 13 episode like cable series is easy to get into, but once you start getting into series that are 26 episodes and everything, like, okay, that's
why you're gonna have that filler. Yeah, that's why you're gonna have that filler, because you got 26 episodes per season, and you can't reinvent the wheel every time.
That's why you always get the clip show. It's one of my least favorite things the sitcoms used to do, where they film a brand new segment where they're sitting around the coffee house on Friends, and they're like, "Remember when you turned 30?" And then it's all clips from previous episodes. I used to hate
Yeah,
that
Simpsons used to do this and make fun of the very format that they were doing.
like the 100th episode.
Well, the 138th episode
right.
Spectacular did that. Like, it actually had more new footage in it than most regular clip shows. But before then, they had seasons where they were straight up clip shows. Simpsons did. Like, that's a whole freaking episode. You're like, remember this that you've already seen? Yeah.
Well, anyway, we're doing a lot on sitcoms
Sure are.
in a network TV because I'm going to recommend Scrubs.
Ooh,
Talked about Scrubs before.
This guy that can't get no love from me, hanging out the passenger's side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me. Go ahead.
Yep.
Scrubs is a criminally underappreciated TV show.
I've heard this from many people.
This was a show, it's been marathoning on Fuse Network.
Yeah, and Comedy Central.
And Comedy Central. And every time it's on, man, I'll get hooked for a good, 2 episodes or so, at least, because... And I tried to put my finger on why this was so good. Now, first, I think I've said this before. This was based on a book from Samuel Shim called House of God, which details the first year of an intern, like post-medical school, going through internship and then residency and that kind of thing. And it's insane. It's a great book. If you want to read something that's related to the medical field, it's fantastic. But they take that and make it super comedic, and they put in John C. McGinley as the attending that's super rough on the Zach Braff character. This is Zach Braff before he got annoying, by the way. And what I like about this show is not only the dialogue, they do have those vignettes that they cut to these fantastical elements that almost predict like a Family Guy type of thing.
Yep.
And because JD, the main character, the Zach Braff character, daydreams all the time. Like, he'll have a situation and it'll be like he'll be called on in class and he doesn't know the answer, and it'll cut to him with like antlers and about to be run over by a truck, like a deer in the headlights, like an actual deer in the headlights. But the other thing is, this is like one of the most racially diverse casts with Donald Faison and Judy Reyes as a black doctor and a Dominican nurse that get together and stay together the entirety of the series, by the way.
That's rare.
They have ups and downs and everything, but there's no like, oh, he went off to dally and other pastors. Dally and other pastors?
I don't know. What the fuck was that? You pulled out like some 17th century shit there.
Yeah.
Dally and other pastures?
That's right.
God.
To fuck other women. But no, there's none of that. Like, it's just a stable, healthy relationship that they keep trying to work on. There's a little bit with JD and Elliot, the will they or won't they and everything. But it's very female forward. There's literally episodes that will focus on, like, the strong women basically reduce us all to children, and they're the ones that are running the show. This was 2002 to 2005 that they're doing this shit. And it's so smart. It's Bill Lawrence, who went on to do another criminally underrated series called Happy Endings, that I'll talk about at some other point. But man, this is a show that was way ahead of its time. It's super enjoyable. If it comes on in a marathon, it was on Netflix for a while. It's not anymore. But if you have a chance to check it out, check it out. It's freaking hilarious, and it's really, really smart.
Yeah, it's a good show. I think what some people had a problem with, and I love Scrubs. I've seen probably every episode. I've probably seen them twice. But like, Scrubs is one of those shows that has a lot of like airplane style gags in it. Yeah. But then it can also go like dead serious drama in a drop of a hat. Yeah. There's a whole episode where like John C. McGinley, like, they're talking about like how his character, is very driven to keep everybody alive and all that and everything. And it's like, as soon as you can't handle somebody dying or whatever, that's when you need to go out. And of course his character goes through this crisis in there. Because there's a point where like JD's like, it's like, it says that when you can't handle somebody dying, that's when you need to, might need to get out. And John C. McGinley turns around and says, "That's right, JT. That's right." Just like he's defeated, And then you're like, whoa, this was a really hilarious show for a while. And now it's like,
it'll punch you in the gut. There's one, I won't spoil the ending, but there's one arc involving Brendan Fraser, actually.
I've heard about this.
That will absolutely kick you in the nards, man. Like,
I've heard that so on a Ferris show, Mom does the same kind of thing.
Oh, really? I didn't realize
that turns sharp drama, serious topic on a dime.
Anytime I've seen that, it's pretty funny.
I like Allison Janney.
Yeah. It should be noted that Scrubs did have quite a run, though. I mean, it I don't think it was ever a huge ratings winner by any means. And of course it was on NBC, so they like to keep shows going if it's like got any kind of critical acclaim at all. You know, I don't know how they dealt with all that through the years, because NBC would do that with shows that were just failing, and they would like keep it up. But it had a good like 8 or 9 seasons or something like that.
The last one was on ABC.
And the last one was the new class that came in, didn't really have the old crew would come in and be like, hey, yeah, you need to do this. And then they just let the new crew do their thing. It wasn't very good.
That's like what happened on House.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I got on board with that, though.
I guess I was.
I like the new
watched
class
House all the way to the end.
I mean, the main draw is House, but like they did paint themselves into a corner with a 1-season finale where everybody like sends in their resignation and everything. So then he had to do that Survivor thing, like that whole next season and everything. But like then it was just got to the point where they're like, well, they're all interchangeable. We can just like change as many as we want.
Yeah, exactly. That had that wonderful those 2 episodes, House's Head and House's Heart. You remember that one?
I mean, I'm sure I saw them, but I don't remember.
Amber dies. In the wreck, and he's haunted by her memory because it was Robert Sean Leonard's girlfriend. Man, those 2 episodes just talk about kicking you in the stomach.
Robert Sean Leonard's so good.
He really is.
He held his own with Hugh Laurie in that show quite well, I thought. Okay, so are we warning people now?
Yes, let's warn.
Danger, Will Robinson. Run away!
All right, so the other day I'm flipping channels, and on Stars I see Passengers is playing, as it has been for months and months. And I like to flip over and watch that. Well, once Lawrence Fishburne wakes up, I kind of start tuning out. I've mentioned this problem I have with this movie a number of times.
Yes.
But I flip over to watch it, and it's not that Passengers. It's the Anne Hathaway Passengers from 2006 or 7. Have you ever seen that movie?
I have not, no.
No.
Fuck that movie.
Really?
Well, it's one of these movies that gives you questions and mysteries and weird behavior, and then, well, this isn't old enough. If you don't want this movie spoiled, skip ahead 5 minutes. I'm going to spoil this movie. So Anne Hathaway is a psychologist, and there's been a plane crash. And she works for the airline. The airline sends her to basically have therapy sessions with the survivors. There are 4 of them, I think. And one of them is Patrick, the Conjuring Wilson. And he kind of has a thing for her, and he's really weird, and you don't know why. And then one person stops coming to the group therapy sessions, and she goes looking for him, and he's acting weird, saying people are following him. And then another person stops coming to the sessions, and she thinks these survivors are being disappeared by the airline because they've been telling her a story about an explosion on the plane, and the airline says it was just pilot error that caused the crash. And like, God, I'm terrible with names. David
Morse.
God, you're inside my head. David Morse is it? Oh, are you looking at the IMDb right now?
I'm looking at the IMDb.
Oh, I thought you just called it from David.
No.
That would
John,
be
that would have been amazing. But I was like, he might be coming up with David Morse next. And as soon as you said David, I was like, Morse.
So David Morse works for the airline and kind of shady, and she eventually confronts him at the airport. I mean, the airline is lying about what happened. These people are being stalked, and it's all explosions. You need blah 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 blah. Now she's dead. They're all dead, and she has to make peace with being dead before she can go on to heaven. She was on the plane with Patrick Wilson. The reason he's flirty with her is because they were flirty on the plane before they died in an explosion. And some of these people in her life, one of them's her boss, and one of them's her neighbor.
Okay.
And she's talked to them several times because she's not sure she should go out with Patrick Wilson, and her neighbor's like, you should do what makes you happy. You can go out with him if you want to go out with him. Yeah. She finds out after the fact, that was her Aunt Tony or whatever. And the other guy was her favorite school teacher because people you knew in life who died before you come back to help you cross. And for Patrick Wilson, it was his dog. And I was enraged at the end of this movie because I like Anne Hathaway. I like a good mystery. I thought it was a plane crash investigation. I thought it was like a mental health kind of thing. And no, it's basically the end of Lost.
Yeah.
Yep.
I did hear about this movie. I never saw it.
I never heard of this movie.
I was so robbed because I remember the trailer intrigued me greatly. And it was kind of like before Anne Hathaway started liking herself so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So before she had done Les Mis, basically is what I mean. Anyway, just such a disappointment. I was so goddamn, because it just wipes away everything I just saw.
Yeah.
Everything you tried to tease and prick me with. No, it was like
Trying
that
to go
season of
for
Roseanne where they were dreaming.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Fuck you.
Trying to do a Shyamalan type of.
I guess.
Ending,
I guess. Really pissed me off.
That's become almost a cliche too. The waiting to go to heaven. This was all you've been dead the whole time type of thing, and that's a cheap ending, you know.
Yep.
And then they get on a boat together and ride off into the water.
With,
Presumably,
with
heaven's
David
on the
Morse?
other side of the Atlantic.
Yes.
No, David Morse was actually the pilot who
Oh,
did
yeah.
crash the plane and felt guilty, and that's why he hadn't crossed over from purgatory yet, because he felt so bad.
All right.
Because
Yeah.
he cost the lives.
I don't want to see this movie
You should not. I'm warning you against this movie.
because I will flip over to the Jennifer Lawrence passages. I have to make sure. That
Now
it's
I'm going to
the
be
correct-
nervous every time I see it. Like, oh, well, fuck. Which one is it?
There was a time where I would flip through channels and like they would get the description wrong. So it would be like 1989 Batman, and you'd be like, cool. And you'd click on 1989 Batman and be the fucking Adam West one.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what?
yeah.
Fucking happens every time. Planet of the Apes.
Oh yeah.
Comcast, if it says it's the Marky Mark version,
Yeah, yeah.
it's the Charlton Heston version. If it
Yeah.
says it's the original, it's the Marky Mark. Every fucking time I try and watch one.
I've seen
'Cause
that
I would,
recently,
I would
too.
watch the original.
Yeah,
I don't
totally.
want anything to do with that Marky Mark
Oh
bullshit.
God damn, that's
Yeah.
awful.
So my warning is a movie that I'm still trying to figure out as far as is this a warning? I don't know if it's either one. Like, it's definitely not. I don't know if it's a recommend either. It's one of those times. The movie is Bright. And,
Oh yeah.
and I watched this, and it's a Netflix original, and it's gotten a lot of publicity because I guess they're even going to make a sequel. It did so well.
They definitely are.
So I like the idea of having fantastical elements in a real world. Like if it's as if Lord of the Rings, like everything that happened in Lord of the Rings, still applies, but like the real world still evolved the same way. Only now we have orcs and elves and fairies and all that who have grown alongside humans and everything. Who knows how that happened?
Mhm.
The movie is not here to explain that to you.
All right.
The movie is here to say, deal with it. You have orcs, elves, and humans mingling together and everything like that. The story of Bright is essentially there is an elf that has taken a wand from another group of elves or some shit or some magical fucking whatever. And
Is it the Elder Wand?
it might as well be. It might as well be the Elder Wand. There's even a part, and a parrot came. It was last week or 2 weeks ago when I was watching this movie, and like Will Smith is playing a cop, and his buddy is Joel Edgerton, who's an orc. There's a part where they're at a gas station and they're protecting this girl who has the wand, and she's the only one who can use it because she's a Bright.
Oh.
And
Roll credits.
exactly, they say that a million times.
Max Landis wrote this thing.
He did. There's a lot of roll credits moments, of course, in this because they say Bright quite often. But there's a point where like some other cop shows up, and at this point they suspect Will Smith and his buddy of doing some shenanigans or whatever, and so like it's Jay Hernandez who shows up and everything, and Will Smith is like he's like stop. That's a wand. That right there's a wand. It's like when you ever require Will Smith to say a line like that.
I think that when I walked in, it was like, we have a magic fucking wand.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Exactly.
This
And
sounds terrible.
so yeah, it is. No, see, here's the thing. It's for sure terrible, but it's you gotta watch it. It's one of those type of things, right?
My buddy Jason really liked it. Like,
Oh, yeah?
Instant messaged me the night he watched. Have you seen this Bright movie on Netflix? I really liked it. I was like,
Interesting.
it's getting tore up in the reviews. But I think a lot of people who watched it liked it. It's one of those Last Jedi things where the critics and the audience are not really very close at all.
It's kind of fun in a way. Like I feel like they really left a lot of like real fun things on the table. Because I think with Ayer directing this and everything, it's still got this idea that it's got to be kind of like almost gritty and this is cop drama and all that. Because one of the subplots of this movie is that Joel Edgerton, who is again playing an orc, his partner,
can't be stated enough.
Exactly. He is trying. There's a racial element to it. Like the most of the cops are humans, or in fact, all of them are humans, and they're trying to show diversity by letting an orc in and everything. But orcs have this sort of stigma to them that they only stick to their own, and they won't go after other orcs if they commit crimes and so on and so forth because of some sort of blood oath or whatever the fuck they're calling it. And so, like, at the very beginning of the movie, something like they could have done so much better with this opening, because the opening of it is Will Smith is like getting a hot dog, and some orc comes out of a like a store. He's obviously robbed the place or whatever, and so like they need to go after that guy, and then they cut it to the the aftermath, where everybody's like, why didn't the Joel Edgerton guy go after the orc? He should have gotten that guy. And so that's basically what the big argument is like, well, can we really trust this dude? And so on and so forth. They could have shown everything at the beginning, and it would have not changed anything about the movie.
Do they come back later on?
Yeah, they come back and show what happened and why everything happened and everything. And I'm like, you could have just done that at the beginning, and we would have still had the same thing. Only we'd have maybe had, like, again, movies are always trying to surprise us with everything now. And this isn't a surprise, really. I mean, it's not. I mean, the whole thing is, can we trust this guy? Can we not? I understand a dramatic reason to put that in there. It just doesn't do anything for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything for me anyway. Like, I feel like it's even more dramatic to show what actually happened. And then when they have this debate, you can have a, sort of, you can feel a certain way about it or whatever, and you move on or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I think it's an unusual, it's an unusual movie. It's got fantastic elements mixing with reality, which we don't see very often. Basically saying the fantastic is real.
That's a really good concept,
right? And it's that it's accepted and just known, like people don't even question it. That type of real. But I really do think there could have been a better story along with this. And yeah, there's so many like moments in there that's just, they're laughable because it just doesn't connect. Will Smith has got some pretty funny lines in this, though. I think there's a scene where he's just like talking to all these neighborhood orc people or whatever, and he's just basically like, fuck it, I'm just gonna say what I need to say and whatever, and it's really kind of funny. But it is kind of interesting that this wand, everybody knows like what kind of power it has and everything. So like these neighborhood gangs are like, ooh, there's a wand. Like they're all after it too. So it's like, this one, it's something that David Ayer specializes in. These one night, this happened there's a whole bunch of chaos going on all at once type of thing. It's still just, is it a warning? Is it a recommend? It's up to you.
It sounds like a wreck-a-warn.
Yeah.
Wreck-a-warn, yes.
There you go.
A warnmendation.
Coining phrases left and right.
That's
today.
right, baby.
An invitation.
Nug life.
That's right.
I've got a hot take on an old movie. I saw Bruce Almighty on one of the cable channels the other night. And we all, I think, love elements of Bruce Almighty. There's the moon. There's the Steve Carell character going. Bruce is a fucking dick. This entire movie until the last 1% of this movie. He is a giant dick. Even when, so like it sets it up as being, a dick that needs to be redeemed. Then God comes down and gives him his powers. He continues to be a dick. Then midway through, he gets kind of this reminder that you need to help other people. He then continues to be a fucking dick. And continues this all the way up to his relationship, to his coworkers. Like, he's just a giant fucking pecker this entire fucking movie until the very, very end. Even after he dies and comes back, still a dick until the very, very end. And even then, it's like, you're really all that redeemed? He is incredibly unlikable. The only way that you would remotely cheer for this dude is because it's Jim Carrey doing his broad comedy shtick. But it gets so broad to me that it gets grating. In this movie in particular. I love Liar Liar. I really like The Mask. I know you guys don't like it. But this is kind of around that era. And it just it hurts. It
what
hurts
happened
to watch.
is, I think Jim Carrey himself was so likable at this point in his career, they forgot to write any likable traits for his character.
Right.
And they just went way overboard with the not likable stuff. Like, the first thing he does with God powers is make the moon bigger and give his wife an orgasm from afar, or his girlfriend.
After he's lifted up some chick's skirt on the street.
Well, yes. But that whole scene has always troubled me. See, this is an interesting study of a movie, because this movie came out when I was much more religious and actively going to church, teaching Sunday school. Mm-hmm. And the movie horrified me from that perspective, because I know a lot of people who are religious that think the movie has positive things to say. And I guess it does. Like, he has to learn the lesson that he wants her to be happy regardless of how he is. It's a silly lesson. I'm not sure why
it's
God.
the only lesson that he learns.
I'm not sure why God would pick him of all assholes on the planet to fix. And then it basically, like, when he's doing that pleasure, like, I was like uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, got all the powers of God. God would not do that.
No. He pursues her. I don't know why she loves this dude so much. I know relationships can get complicated, but this guy is a fucking asshole. Mm-hmm. Like, all around.
Selfish.
Super selfish. He's blaming everything on God. Even, like, after he has this kind of godlike realization, he steps in a puddle on the way up to meet God, and he's like, there you go. He blames it on God. I'm like, fuck you, man. Oh, man. So even though there are moments in here that are funny, he's so more so than I remembered. He's so fucking unlikable.
Isn't it justified though because he didn't get the job at the beginning of the movie?
It's all justified because of that.
Yeah. It's Jesus.
That is one of the greatest comedy moments of the last 20 years. Is that back to you, fuckers?
Yeah. It is interesting that they said this in Buffalo of all places. Too.
I loved all the interview he does with the old lady where he keeps like asking her about Titanic.
Oh yeah.
She threw the heart of the sea into the sea or whatever.
Yeah.
There's lots to like about Bruce Almighty, but you're not wrong. He's a total asshole in that whole movie.
He is a dick.
And barely learns like the lesson of being a decent human being.
Yeah, and it's only in regards to this relationship.
Yeah, he doesn't want anybody else to be happy.
Yeah.
Just her.
All right, so we're going to skip over the recasting, so we'll come back to that at some point. We got a good one lined up for you guys. We're going to go into questions.
Question. I got something to say. I want the truth. I'm listening.
I want the truth.
Yeah.
You know, I was listening to that Funk Dat song. I forget what the guy's name. DJ. That's where that comes from. You know, the question at the beginning of that thing. It's a song called Funk Dat. And I was listening to that the other day, and the guy is like this 90s like thinking man's rapper, and he's like, why is it that anytime I try to go to get a job, you know, my car breaks down? Funk that.
Yeah.
Funk that. And then I watched the Beavis and Butthead that follows it.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Why is it? It's Saget is the rapper's name. Anyway, so just in case anybody was curious about that, here's our first question, podcast question. I know Jeremy hated to send Les Miserables. As of 2018, what movies did you hate after sinning? The follow-up question, what movie did you really like after sinning that you thought you'd hate? I like this question. This is a fun one.
It's a good one, I guess. Cars 3.
Cars 3. You hated that one.
Big, flaming, giant fucking... Now, here's the problem. So many people said, it's so much better than Cars 2.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's Cars 1 again.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I was surprised. I thought, just based on what I had heard, that it would be, for me, you know, like a B, maybe a B+, back to being able to enjoy these characters a little bit. And it's just a sloppy retread of a mess. And all it does is make all the movies that came before it make even less sense.
Well, that's true. And talk about an unlikable protagonist.
Yeah, no shit.
Lightning McQueen. By the third movie, He should know his shit by now.
Yeah, like every time he learns this lesson, I shouldn't be so selfish all the time. And whoa. It's like every single movie, I shouldn't be so selfish. And then it's like the next movie, like the same sort of circumstances happen, and then he doesn't even realize while he's yelling at somebody. Like,
well, there's that, and then the technical aspects of this are ridiculous too. There is no way that he could even think about approaching the speeds that Jackson Storm are going to do, and then the ending it's
but supposedly if he trains enough he can get more horsepower. This movie is just, I mean, the first movie, Cars, I can take all the unanswered bullshit about how this world operates because it's just a one-off, but by the time you've done these second two movies, I can't not ask questions.
Right.
Where did Jackson Storm come from? Is he born? Was he built?
Yep.
Can lightning not go to whoever factory built him and get some upgrades?
And they're not even, and even if they were built, like let's say you were in the team built category, they're not like hiding like Toy Story where they have to hide that they're talking to each other and all that. They're in their own fucking world. Yeah. They're in a universe. So like either they're getting built by other cars, which makes no sense, or
they're having sex.
They're having sex. And they obviously fall in love and everything. And like,
how could it be fair to have such an advanced car racing against? This is like sending a Tesla out to race against a Mustang.
Yeah,
that's like that.
Or like
racing circuits wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
Lightning would
like
be racing other Lightnings, and Jackson would be racing other Jacksons.
Yeah, it's like the Truck Series versus IndyCar.
Yeah,
they're not running on the same fucking track.
And then cherry on top is let's cast Armie Hammer. Who's got maybe the least distinctive voice of anyone ever.
That's true. He's a good actor, but
I like him as an actor. That's one of the most baffling voice casting choices ever.
Let's get somebody that you have. Nobody will guess.
Nobody even knows that guy's name for the most part, unless you're a big Social Network fan.
When he showed up, I was like, oh, okay, who is this? It's got to be somebody big.
It could literally be one of like 30 people.
Yeah. And then I looked it up, and it was like Armie Hammer. I was like, oh.
There you go. Yes.
Jeremy's iron.
Jeremy's iron.
Here's a ball. Perhaps you'd like to bounce it. Should I do my other one? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. For the one that you hated after. I'm sorry, the one that you liked.
I enjoyed more after Sinning would probably be Split.
Oh yeah.
Because my first watch, I couldn't see that as anything other than a trick, or a gimmick. But on multiple watches, mostly through Sinning, I found a lot more to like about that movie, and I would watch it start to finish right now. And I don't really particularly like the way the Bruce Willis thing happens, but I liked it more than I thought I would. I think that's the spirit of the question.
No, there's a lot to like in that movie. All of the psychology bugged me, but all of James McAvoy's performances are so fucking good.
I'm really, really impressed with him.
He's amazing in that, especially when he's that prim and proper lady. Korean music aids in digestion.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And Anya Taylor-Joy is really good. That was her. She was in The Witch before this came out, but and she was really good in that. So I mean, she's got a really bright career going forward.
I think so. One that now obviously there's a lot of movies that I know I'm going to hate.
Yeah.
Before I even sent it, one that I was surprised that I had seen before and liked, and then ended up not liking it after the Sins video was Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh yeah, I remember that experience.
Yeah. And I actually ran into somebody randomly a couple weeks ago who said they didn't like Who Framed Roger Rabbit either. And it's weird. Like, when you are, and I was 11 when this movie came out, and I really liked it. I liked the idea of cartoons mixing with the real world and all that. And I really liked the movie overall. When we got to the Sins part of it, though, I was just like, oh my God, this isn't very good, is it? It was shocking to me.
What is the main gripe that you have with it?
It's
what
stupid.
is it? Yeah,
What's stupid?
It's really they just kind of stopped at let's put cartoons and humans in the same movie.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that plot just doesn't seem to add up overall. I guess it's.
Because Christopher Lloyd is basically trying to put in a highway system, right? And then he's got to tear down Toontown to do it.
Yeah,
It's been a while since I've seen it.
You know, and even after the Sims video and everything, which was now what 2-3 years ago now. I don't remember much about it anymore, but I just remembered going, you know, like I was sitting there like when put it on the schedule, I was like, oh dear, this is going to be very, very hard to send.
Mm-hmm. And
then it turned out it wasn't. Like it was not only just the stupid stuff that we put in, but it was also like real stuff too. So I was really surprised by that. One that I for sure hated, like I hate this movie probably more, like a movie that I thought for sure I was going to hate, somehow I hated it even worse after sending it, was Transformers Age of Extinction. I think the movie we obviously had to make that 2 videos.
Yeah.
That's how long it was. It was one of those where it was shocking, like you would press play and like something else would happen to infuriate you and you would have to write about it, and then you would press play off of that pause and like some other fucking bullshit would happen immediately. Like we practically put that whole movie on the fucking
that was long,
like
man.
I've seen all the Transformers. So like first Transformers is passable. I hate the second one. I hate the third one even more.
Yep.
So I was like, there's no way I can get lower. Age of Extinction got there. And then even that Last Night bullshit wasn't even like as bad as Age of Extinction.
No, I agree, but they're both terrible.
They're both horrible movies. But yeah, that was one of those. And that's the reason why I hated it more, I think, is just the fact that every single frame of that movie had me going, oh my God,
I can't not mention
I have
this.
to write something about this. Like the number of things we had to cut from that thing, like it was like legitimate shit. So yeah, that one was not good at all. A couple of them that I ended up liking more. I did not like Jack Reacher when I first watched it.
Oh yeah.
When we send it though, I started seeing, there's some really cool things in this. Now it's not a great movie by any means, but it certainly way better than I originally thought it was. Especially that opening scene is really well done. But yeah, I like how Cruise goes through the whole mystery of everything and solves all the stuff and everything. I know Jack Reacher fans weren't happy that he was in there because Jack Reacher's and there is that thing that they had to have left in from the book because they were talking about how huge this guy was.
Yeah.
One of the witnesses is like how huge this guy was, and the guy and the guy's like, that must have been Jack Reacher. And I'm like, how do you know that? By looking at Tom Cruise. A movie that I sort of liked and I think I like better now, and we just talked about it either in the outtake stuff or earlier in this episode, is Ender's Game. I do think that Ender's Game probably deserved a lot. Now, when that movie came out, there was a lot of stuff about Orson Scott Card.
Yeah, I guess he's homophobic or something.
Yeah, so there was a lot of that. I think that sort of hurt it. It also, the movie itself, I don't think does justice to the book. Like, it's not like if you're a big, huge, Ender's Game fan and you go watch that movie, you are going to see the cuts that are in that movie. But I think that, especially, and I've read the book, but it's long distant from me now. Watching it now and just only remembering certain things about the book and everything, I think that movie is really well done, and it's surprising too, coming from a director, Gavin Hood, who did X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Oh yeah.
But I think he did everything really well in that. There's not a lot of eye rolling like the last 30 minutes of this movie are riveting. They are riveting.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And I think
especially if you don't know what's coming.
Right. And I think that this movie deserved a lot more when it came out. It was considered an unfilmable book for the longest time. And they finally did one, and I think they did it pretty well. And it's, either people didn't like Orson Scott Card by this point, or they didn't care, or whatever, but deserved a lot more.
Interesting.
Good call. Good call. And you, sir?
So the one that I hated, obviously, just like Chris said, I know I'm going to probably not like Emoji Movie when I go into that. it was confirmed, and I probably hated it even more upon the Sins viewing.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the movies that surprised me, all three of them actually, was the Despicable Me franchise.
Oh, yeah.
I had seen Despicable Me with my son, I don't know, right around when it came out.
2010, I believe, was the first one.
And it was enjoyable. Like, I enjoyed it. It was fine. Steve Carell was a little bit grating, but the kids were really cute. The story was interesting. Evil villain turning, good, and family man and all that stuff. And then when I went to Senate, it was just so obnoxious. Everything about, like, this universe, how, you can die sometimes, but you can't die sometimes. All this villainy is being done in full view of the public. All the minions. The minions.
The minions. I was gonna say they just keep getting worse. The more they make in this world, they're just worse. 2 was worse than 1. 3 was apparently just abysmal.
Oh, it was absolutely horrible. 2, I'd actually seen before we sinned the first one because we did it right before 3 came out.
Yep.
And I remember not necessarily hating that one. It was a little bit more annoying. The minions were involved. But I fucking loathed that movie. And the third one, Jesus Christ, man. It was, Chris wrote a set about it. Like, it's literally 2 different movies just kind of terribly spliced together.
Yeah.
Because, there's just one path that's going down. There's another path. And they just don't make any sense together.
This could have easily just been the Trey Parker character and him trying to get his job back, Gru getting his job back. Yeah. And trying to find him and everything. It didn't need Drew at all. Like, if they wanted to make a Gru and Drew story, I could understand that too, especially if Drew is a supervillain or something like that. But yeah, it's like they introduced this Trey Parker character and you're like, okay, we got to worry about that. And then it's like 30 minutes of just him and Drew like getting into adventures.
Yeah.
And you're like, where did the Trey Parker guy go?
And there's no sense of space in this movie. Like, you can take a short boat ride, like across the Atlantic or something like that. So, fuck those movies really, really hard. And I don't really have a very good example of ones that I liked or really, really liked after not liking them before. But a couple of movies confirmed how great they were. I saw 7 when it came out in 1995, and I liked it. It was good. It was probably the first David Fincher movie I saw Aliens 3 before that. And I liked it. It was very interesting. It was, very disturbing, obviously. But I kind of had forgotten a lot of the detective elements. I had just, thought about the horrific elements. And when we send it, man, goddamn. I mean, like, I was engrossed with this movie. Typically, you're doing what Chris was describing. You're stopping and you're thinking and you're doing this. And I would just kind of like let it go and then have to come back and say, like, oh, no, that didn't make a whole lot of sense. But it confirmed how great it was.
I saw a video on Reddit today that was titled, all 44 times Brad Pitt touches his head in the movie 7.
Wow.
I didn't watch the video.
44 times. Yeah, I could see that.
There is quite a few times he does that.
Yeah, yeah. And the other one that reminded me how great it was, and it had been a while since I'd seen Aliens. And I think I texted Chris halfway through it. I was like, God damn, this movie's good.
Yeah.
You get through, and it had a certain amount of sins, and it didn't really matter how many sins it was. It's just so fucking good. It's so well put together. It's such a great action movie. It retains a lot of the fun elements or the interesting elements from the first one. And then the ending is so great, man. So yeah, those were 2 that really confirmed how much I liked it.
I can confirm when a movie is good when I can get through the first 30 minutes and I've written stuff and I've written good stuff. But that first 30 minutes, and usually 30 minutes is my good like break off point if I need to go do some other things. I try to get to that 30-minute mark. But if I can get through that and go, oh man, I could go another 30 without any problem, I know a movie's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I won't mind coming back to it. And that's what happened to, I mean, of course, there's a lot of the ones that you're talking about where they just confirm that it's good. A lot of those like that, where you're just like 30 minutes have gone by. I could go the rest of this movie and it'd be done with it in the next 2 hours.
Yeah, that literally just happened to me this morning.
Yeah.
SinCast is my favorite. Thank you. But this is inspired as a Dream Sins video. John Travolta in Urban Cowboy is an all-timer for laughs. In college, around 2010 or so, we had dorm watch parties that lasted 3 or 4 nights in a row by popular demand. This movie is so goddamn funny. Just get me a beer. I hope you send it on a rainy day. Do you guys have any unintentionally funny all-timers.
I've mentioned, I'm sure, this movie before, but Scarface is the unintentionally funny movie for me. Never have gotten on board with this being a masterpiece or whatever people refer to Scarface as. Or
Push it to the limit.
Yes. Al Pacino playing Cuban. Yeah, that's right off the bat. You know, it just doesn't work. And
I'm a political refugee, okay? I don't come on no banana boat, okay?
Yeah. This whole town's a pussy that needs to get fucked. The scene where his sister and his best friend he learns that they've gotten married behind his back, and I'm sure I've said this on the podcast before. Tony Montana is not the guy that you spring surprises on.
Yep.
You would never surprise Mary behind his back and then go, we were just trying to surprise you. And of course he shoots him before he even gets that message or whatever. Like, it's like the whole thing. Like I think he's doing, you know, I mean, the mountain of cocaine he snorts, like during when he's really the boss and everything. Yeah. The over the top helicopter death scene when he's down on the ground, Robert Lowe's just like, look up there, you know, and it's like, you know, they throw his partner off and hang him on the helicopter.
It's Sosa that does that.
Is it Sosa?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. But like all that stuff is just funny to me.
Well, even the Robert Lozier thing where he's like, never underestimate the other guy's greed. It's like Robert Lozier playing a Cuban is even less believable than like an Al Pacino doing it.
Yeah. So yeah, everything is super over the top, and there's no surprise to that. Brian De Palma is one of those like over dramatic directors. It works in it works in a lot of movies. Mm-hmm. It doesn't in a lot of others. But Al Pacino is, of course, a very bombastic actor and everything. Then you make him play Cuban. And then Oliver Stone wrote the screenplay, apparently on cocaine. So you had the elements for that movie. And I know that there's a lot of people who love it and everything. I do think that was the funniest reveal ever after we did the movie recipe. Like, came on this podcast and they're talking about, like, I fucking hate this movie. After on the movie recipe, he was sitting there going, yeah, this food's great. And the food was great. Not lying about the food, but like having to pretend to be like excited about Scarface was not fun.
Was not easy.
Jesus.
I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to go off script.
All right.
The movie Higher Learning is unintentionally funny.
In
about a dozen different spots.
This is the Michelle Pfeiffer one?
No, this is John Singleton movie.
Well, Lawrence Fishburne is the professor. Omar Epps is the new track star. Cuba Gooding Jr. Ice Cube is the Black
other
Power
Cube.
guy. Michael Rappaport is a new student. And the girl who has sex with Charlie Sheen in the car while he's driving in that one movie.
Oh, it's Christy Swanson.
Christy Swanson.
Yeah.
Okay, really just Lawrence Fishburne's Jamaican accent is enough to make you giggle. But it's extra, like, this is what you should do. You should make a game of it. Try not to laugh watching this movie and see how many times you're successful. Because his first scene, he's like this imposing professor and he's got all these students in his psychology class or whatever, and he's like, would the following students please stand up? And I'm not doing a Jamaican accent. And he reads off all these students. Omar Epps actually reads them off. And then he says, the school has told me you can't attend my class because you haven't paid your bills. Get out. And I'm like, it's the first goddamn day of school. How'd they even get in the dorm if they hadn't paid anything? How do you get a schedule of classes without... It's the first day of school. How can you be behind on payments? Anyway, Lawrence Fishburne's accent is comically bad to the point where you wonder... who exactly behind the scenes was pushing for this? So he's never done one that I'm aware of in a previous movie. Never done one since. Was it John Singleton? It was like, for this professor to have gravitas. He must have come from Jamaica.
Yes.
But plenty of, it's basically, the whole movie is just really cheesy melodrama. A lot of the racism stuff from both sides is really far over the top. Like, I didn't go to a public university, but I doubt white people are calling black people the N-word every time they pass them on campus.
I went to a public school.
That's one of the part of it too. Like Michael Rappaport plays like a skinhead.
He gets recruited by the skinheads.
Yeah, and that's like the big
Michael Rappaport plays an excellent racist.
Oh yeah, but it's like this like super racially charged college,
way over the top.
And
the girl you just thought of her name from the
Christy
Swanson. She gets date raped. I don't want to call something about date rape melodramatic, but she spirals into lesbianism.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
With Jennifer Connelly.
Yes.
Super young Tyra Banks is in this movie. It's basically after Boys in the Hood, somebody threw a shit ton of money at John Singleton and said, put every idea you've ever had into one movie.
Yeah.
And he did, and we got Higher Learning. It's comical even when it's trying to be really dramatic. Of course, the whole thing ends in this massive race riot. And and like Ice Cube has no respect for Omar Epps because he's on a track scholarship. He's running for the man.
Well, right. And then he would later sort of reprise that role in Don't Be a Menace to South Central.
Oh, yeah?
While drinking your juice in the hood. Because he's the guy who made it. Like, he finally made it to college and all that, and he gets shot immediately or whatever. But yeah, you had Ice Cube in there, and Cole Hauser's in the movie.
He's the guy that recruits the Rappaport.
Yeah.
The skinhead stuff is cringeworthy.
Yeah.
Now, maybe after the events of the last year, maybe it's not as cringy.
Yeah.
But the last time I saw this movie, I was cringing pretty hard. And as well as the first time I saw this movie, I was cringing pretty hard.
Oh, yeah.
So.
This has maybe become like a trendy thing to do. And I don't mean it to be that way, but I saw The Happening in a very like innocent way. The trailers looked amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You had those people laying down in front of the lawnmowers. You had all this mysterious shit going on. And you had kind of some buzz that M. Night Shyamalan was kind of back to doing like good shit. You know, This is after he'd already started to go off the rails a little bit. And so I went into it and I was like, all right, good people in there. Zooey Deschanel. And Mark Wahlberg, had a decent track record. And Jesus Christ, man, this movie is so fucking awful. And it's typified by Wahlberg's doe-eyed, weird performance. What?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just, it makes no sense.
Say hello to your mother for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Was there that scene that everybody brings up in The Happening where the old lady's like going crazy on him or whatever, and she's like, "You're trying to steal something from me" or whatever, and he's like, "No," or something like that. Whatever he does.
Yeah. Oh my God, he's like trying to play overly sincere. I think he's like a school teacher or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And God damn, it's so stupid for an M. Night Shyamalan movie. It's a stupid fucking movie.
Yeah.
So there was a Thanksgiving or a holiday party that friends of mine threw in Chicago where they played all of M. Night Shyamalan's movies up until that point. And for whatever reason, they played The Happening twice right when I was there.
Really?
And the first time we caught the end of it and we were laughing about it, the people there were ingesting a lot of substances. I was not. But goddamn, when we started from the beginning and watched it all the way through, we were like we were in pain from laughing so hard. Like it was just absolutely, when you watch it from a comedic element and almost like The Room or something like that, where you just laugh at the air coming, the people walking, the different suicide attempts, which is terrible, but in this context, it's hilarious because it's so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Yes, the wind chasing them, that was the biggest laugh, I think. But so that's an unintentionally funny movie.
It's interesting to me, too, that we got movies made out of the disappearance of the bees. We got a bunch of those. And you find out, it was just using the wrong pesticides and stuff like that. It wasn't anything mysterious at all. It's just corporations being stupid again. And that's it. Now we've got a happening because of it.
Now we have a happening.
It's got electrolytes.
Yeah,
it's got electrolytes.
Exactly. Yeah. It's what plants crave. All right, that will do it for this week. Keep going to Facebook. Keep going to Facebook. The SinCast presented by Cinemasins.
Facebook is presented by
Facebook
Cinemasins.
presented by Cinemasins. By the way, if that were true, I would not be doing this anymore. Probably.
You can do it from an island.
We'd be like, I'd be doing it from an island for sure. But keep going to the SinCast presented by Cinemasins Facebook page. Keep going to SoundCloud. Keep going to Reddit. Got a bunch of places that you can come and comment on this here very episode.
Definitely. And subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and do it and spread the word. Have people click that subscribe button on iTunes. And spread the love. Spread the cheese.
Banner Day.
Yay.
Anyway, that'll do it for this week. It's Chris Atkins and Jeremy Scott and Barrett Sher. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
Hey, I accidentally deleted a Sins video.
Yeah, that was fun.
I can't tell you how mad I was at myself. It's such a stupid half-second of time.
Well, here's my thing with that method that YouTube has for deleting videos. I hate it.
Oh, I hate it too.
Because even when I am 100% sure that I'm going to delete the right video because I have it checked in the box, I'm always worried because the way they do it is they cover the entire screen with that "are you sure" bullshit. Can't they just show you the video that's going to get deleted?
Yeah.
Can't they just say, these are the videos, are you sure?
Yeah. I've clicked out cancel probably every time.
Well, and hell, can't they have a undo button? Jesus, I spent like 20 minutes thinking, if I delete something on my PC, it goes in the recycle bin. If I want it, I can still go get it.
Yeah.
Until I delete the recycle bin contents. There should be something like that.
Yes.
You just deleted a video. Are you sure you wanted to do that? Oh, shit, it was Girls Trip? No, I did not.
Well, and they think that by saying this can't be undone, that's your warning. But like, still, they have to be able to have the power to have something in their programming that says, here's the video. Are you sure you want to delete that?
Yeah. At least for a period of time.
Yeah.
Like for, I don't know, half an hour or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, so mad. Oh, so mad.
Well, at least you're not running the computers in Hawaii.
I'm sure.
Have you seen that interface? Literally there were two buttons to click and two lines, links, and he clicked the wrong one. They were right on top of each other.
Yeah.
God, it's some pretty shitty user interface.
We're at, an hour and 50 minutes or so?
Right at an hour 49.
Okay.
It's almost like you looked at the time.
I looked at the time.
I was like, how did you ever do that?
Yeah.
It's just like where he got David Morse.
Right.
Pulled out of thin air.
It's almost like you have a screen in front of you.
The reason I thought it was at least possible that you pulled that out of your ass was because I have forgotten David Morse's name like 3 times on this podcast. And you've probably been through 2 times of me going, David, that guy who's in that Shia LaBeouf movie, Disturbia, David Morse. I thought it was at least plausible that you weren't looking at it because that's the name I've flubbed many
Normally,
times.
yes, you would have to go through a couple of movies and say he was in this and that and his name's David something, then I would come up with Morse. But yeah,
you thought about Disturbia before Contact for David Morse?
Yes. I don't know why. I only saw Disturbia once.
I mean, you got to think that, like, Fred Durst probably did have some success with the TRL crowd because he said that he definitely said that he had sex with Christina Aguilera, or they fooled around or something like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't brag about that.
Christina Aguilera in her prime?
In her prime, she was like 17.
No, she was 17 when she did Genie in a Bottle.
Yeah,
and then all the stuff afterwards.
Not finding her attractive.
Really? Not even in the Stripped album, the Dirty era? Really?
No.
She was filthy.
And I'm not above dirty girls. You know, like I was trying to explain this to my wife the other day. I forget how we got on this subject, but basically, is this person attractive? And I said, yeah, in that, trashy trailer park kind of way. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, now maybe I'm unique and I'm exposing myself to the world right now. But like in college, like my guy friends and I would talk about that as a thing. Like, like she's got a bunch of tears in her shirt and super dirty jeans and like jelly shoes and like hair that hasn't been washed in a couple days, but there's still something hot about her.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
that dirty video is disgusting.
Oh my god. That was one of the early. I think I wrote sins for that. That was one of the early ones for that channel.
That was some it was a stand-up comic who was saying something, and I think we even said this in the sins video too, that it's the only video I've ever seen where somebody's taking a shower, but they seem like more dirty by the end of it.
Yeah. It's like all the pop stars do this, where they have a turn where they're like, I'm going to express my individuality. And it'll be either Miley Cyrus or Christina Aguilera, where it's like they go way over the top. Yeah. Or Britney Spears with her.
Miley course corrected pretty well.
Yeah. She just became the lovable stoner.
She went, and she's even given that up now. And,
has she?
Oh, yeah. She's claimed to have given up weed, like, I think a year ago or so.
Really?
I think that was part of why Dude Man got back with her, because...
Oh, Luke Hemsworth?
Yeah, he wasn't so big a fan of the druggy stuff.
Yeah.
I don't guess.
Well, she would hang around with Wayne Coyne from Flaming Lips.
Yeah.
The front man.
Still does.
Yeah, still does. And they're like really into like psychedelia and things like that and a lot of drugs and everything. And like he had stories where, be times where we'd just all strip naked and just, hang out. And that was Miley. She liked to strip naked and do drugs.
Yeah. I mean,
Those are some weird parties, I bet.
I'll bet. You got all the money in the world. No real responsibility unless you want it. I mean, I'm sure there was lots of nudity and drugs.
Yeah.
And drug nudity.
Drudity.
Nugs.
Yep.
You want to do some nugs tonight?
Yeah.
What is that? Naked drugs.
What's funny is I'm sure there probably are stoners who refer to their herb as nugs.
Oh, yeah. I had a friend in Chicago that said she wanted to, and this was said when she was obviously very stoned, she was like, I want to get a tattoo across my stomach that says Nug Life.